Chapter 764. If the Medicine Valley could not nurture a successor before the end of its lifespan, and the successor had to be recognized by all the beasts, it would definitely cause chaos. In the end, the beasts would not have a good ending, and the Medicine Valley's foundation would be destroyed. That was not what the beast Thearch wanted to see. As he thought about it, the beast Thearch's huge spiritual power spread out like a spider web, spreading to every corner of the Medicine Valley. Then, a small blade of grass appeared in his palm. This blade of grass was only as small as moss, but it exuded a strong spirit chi, giving off a sense of boundless vitality. When it appeared, the grass in the plaza, which had disappeared due to the battle, quickly grew back. In the blink of an eye, it was already knee-high. Longevity spirit grass. Qin Hao could not help but exclaim. The beast Thearch's grass of boundless vitality was one of the 3 main ingredients needed to refine the 9 transformations soul return elixir. Qin Hao had searched the Medicine Valley for almost half a month and did not find a single clue. However, the beast Thearch had obtained it with a single thought. He was indeed the master of the Medicine Valley. Why did it disappear? At this moment, the beast Thearch suddenly exclaimed, his old face frowning. According to the dog spirit's conditions, he had found 1,000 beast grass and was about to move the white glass soul stone over. However, the white glass soul stone that grew in the Sacred Spirit Valley had disappeared into thin air. He remembered very clearly that there was a white glass soul stone in the Medicine Valley. Why did it disappear? The beast Thearch was in a dilemma. The longevity spirit grass and the white glass soul stone could only be nurtured once every 500 years. There were only 2 of them in the entire Medicine Valley. Even as the master of the Medicine Valley, who controlled the life and death of all the beasts, he could not speed up the growth of the herbs. Who took the white glass soul stone without permission? Hand it over to me in 3 breaths' time. The beast Thearch shouted sternly. His voice was not loud, but it rolled out like thunder. At this juncture, he could not allow any mistakes to ruin the dog spirit's chances of becoming a member of the Medicine Valley. At that moment, all the beasts in the Medicine Valley were uneasy. Without the beast Thearch's order, they did not dare to touch the rare herbs in the Medicine Valley. No one dared to take them. Oh, I'm sorry. I took the white glass soul stone. At this time, Yishuehan smiled embarrassedly. He took out the white glass soul stone and walked up to Qin Hao. With a sincere expression, he extended his hand and handed it to Qin Hao. Boss, here you go. In fact, when Yishuehan had just entered the Medicine Valley, he had immediately left the Mad Dragon team to search for the white glass soul stone and 10,000 beast grass for Qin Hao. Unfortunately, after going through so much trouble, he only managed to find a white glass soul stone. Forgive me for secretly sending people to your hometown and learning about Senior Dan Xian. In truth, as your brother, I wanted to give you a pleasant surprise. Yishuehan pursed his lips and lowered his head. He didn't know if Qin Hao would blame him, but he really wanted to do something for Qin Hao. Just like how Qin Hao risked everything to save Yishuehan in the Dark Night Forest. Yishuehan also wanted to risk everything for Qin Hao, especially since danger lurked everywhere in the Medicine Valley. Usually, there would be danger when harvesting precious herbs. Good brother. Qin Hao patted Yishuehan's shoulder and looked at the sparkling and translucent stone in his hand. At this moment, other than feeling touched, how could he blame Yishuehan? So it was you who harvested the white glass soul stone. I have to admit that you are quite capable. I remember your surname is Yi, right? You are Yilong Yuan's son. It seems like Yilong Yuan has given birth to a talented successor. The beast Thearch's gaze landed on Yishuehan for the first time. He looked at him seriously. The white glass soul stone grew in the Sacred Spirit Valley. Although the Sacred Spirit Valley sounded sacred, it was actually filled with poison and was filled with danger. The moment the white glass soul stone was harvested, there was a high chance that the soul of the external object would be absorbed. He was indeed Yilong Yuan's son. He was someone who could achieve great things. It is actually so dangerous. Shuehan, Qin Hao was moved. If he were the one harvesting the white glass soulstone, Qin Hao wouldn't be afraid that his soul would be absorbed unless the white glass soulstone could withstand the impact of Emperor-grade spiritual power. However, Yi Shuihan, I am fine, boss. Have you forgotten? I have been poisoned by the demon breath in the Dark Night Forest. The poison in the Sacred Spirit Valley has no effect on me. Before I came out, my father gave me a life-saving trump card. It was supposed to be used to deal with Tian Wang, but it is okay. Yi Shuihan scratched his head and laughed. He looked like he didn't care at all. However, Qin Hao saw a hint of lingering fear in Yi Shuihan's eyes. It was most likely that Yi Shuihan's soul had been forcefully absorbed the moment he had taken the white glass soul stone. Furthermore, Yi Shuihan had thought that he would not survive. Fortunately, Yi Longyuan's trump card came into play at the crucial moment. Luo Shui Imperial Palace. Yi Longyuan said, "Damn, my Emperor-grade clone was actually sucked to death just to get a piece of broken stone. It seems like it will take at least 10 days to half a month to recover." Achoo! In the Medicine Valley, Yi Shuihan sneezed. "Good brother, it seems that in order to get the white glass soul stone, you are still affected. You must have been eroded by the cold air of the Sacred Spirit Valley. But it is okay. I will use my soul fire to expel the cold for you." Qin Hao was silently moved. He patted Yi Shuihan's shoulder again. Roar! The dog spirit nodded at Qin Hao. With the longevity spiritual grass and the white glass soul stone in Qin Hao's space ring, Dan Xian was really going to be reborn this time. However, the price was the dog spirit had to leave Qin Hao. Therefore, at this moment, it was bidding farewell to Qin Hao. It couldn't go back with him to witness Dan Xian's spring. Don't be so sad. It is not a lifetime to be separated. After it completely integrates with the Emperor's soul inheritance and obtains my bloodline talent, you can still meet again in 3 years. The Beast Emperor said. Qin Hao nodded and looked at the others. Do you have any other requests? Since Brother Dog is staying, let's make the price more expensive. At the very least, it should be an equivalent exchange. For example, each of you can find a Beast Emperor to be your mount. If you have any requests, feel free to state them. Otherwise, we will be letting Brother Dog down. We can't sell Brother Dog too cheaply. Brother Dog, my heart is bitter. The Beast Emperor almost vomited blood. Do you think my Beast Emperors are stray dogs on the street? You can't just take one away. This isn't too good? Syoga was a little tempted, but it was just a fantasy. What's so bad about it? Since the Beast Emperor has asked for a master-servant contract, if we don't agree, wouldn't we be looking down on the Beast Emperor? Qin Hao said. The Beast Emperor. This is too much. No, we don't dare to let Lord Beast Emperor be our mount. However, we can ask for more herbs from Senior. For example, Venerable Grade and Emperor Grade herbs. After all, the higher the grade of the herbs we bring back, the more capable we are. Yi Shuihan said with a chuckle. Let Beast Emperors be their mounts? That was pure nonsense. Yi Shuihan's father was an Emperor-grade cultivator. Without a high cultivation level, there was no way he could control Beast Emperors. Even if he forced them to sign a master-servant contract with Yi Shuihan and Nailin Li's character, they definitely wouldn't do such a thing. Why force them? It was better to offer something more practical. Chapter 765. Were Emperor-level herbs, like leaves that could be found on the streets? He said it so casually. I don't have any Emperor-level herbs, and I don't have any Emperor-level herbs either. Because the Medicine Valley has maintained its primitive appearance, the herbs it produces are of higher quality. However, there is a limit to the quantity. They are the foundation of the survival of all the beasts in the Medicine Valley. At most, I can give each of you one Emperor-level herb. Most of you are not even at the Emperor level yet. You can show off with the Emperor-level herbs. The Beast Tharch waved his hand and rejected him decisively. He was being stingy. The distribution of herbs within the Medicine Valley depended on their level and contribution. Qin Hao nodded. Let's do as you say. Even if we give them the Emperor-level herbs, they won't be able to absorb the power of the herbs. Instead, they will be killed. You have a good idea. The Beast Tharch nodded and smiled. He waved his sleeves, and with a flash of light, An emperor-level herb appeared under each of Tsyogwa and the others. The herbs had different attributes. The beast Tharch had specially selected them according to each person's physique. He was very considerate. Tsyogwa and Hanman picked up the emperor-level herbs under their feet. They were overjoyed. However, there were two exceptions. Nalan Lee had a flower in her hand. It emitted a strong spiritual aura. It was undoubtedly a great supplement for a spirit array master. Naransu had a banana leaf. The leaf contained an explosive and violent aura. It was very compatible with her cultivation technique. After consuming it, not only would it increase her level, but it would also help her cultivation technique. However, the two girls were not happy. "What's wrong? Not satisfied?" Qin Hao asked. This, Nalan Li was a little embarrassed. She actually wanted to say, "I am very satisfied." However, she did not come to the Medicine Valley for herself this time. "Let me say it. Lord Beastharch, can we reject your herbs and change it to other conditions?" Naransu asked. Her eyes were pleading and expectant. "Yes." The Beastharch nodded without hesitation. "I said that as long as it is not too much and is within old man's tolerance, I will fulfill your wishes." "Thank you, Lord Beastharch. We beg you to save someone." Thump! Naransu pulled Nalan Li to kneel down. This scene came very suddenly, causing the joyous crowd to be somewhat surprised. "Stand up and speak. Not everyone can kneel to this emperor just because they want to. I will not accept your kneeling ceremony, but I promise to help you save the patient. Tell me the details of the patient." The beast Thearka's tone remained calm. To him, saving a human was a piece of cake. As soon as he finished speaking, an invisible force lifted up Naransu and Nalan Li in front of him. "It's like this. Have you ever seen a strange disease where a person's body turns into light and disappears? And it can cure this strange disease?" Nalan Zhu was filled with gratitude as he anxiously spoke. Her mother, the Empress of Great Wei, was still fine 18 years ago. She was as beautiful as a flower, a great beauty. It was also that year that she married the current Wei Emperor and gave birth to the two sisters. But after that, for some reason, the Empress's health deteriorated day by day. Especially in the past 2 years, her complexion had been very bad. She had become extremely yellow and could not even get out of bed. Her weak body had become translucent and seemed like it would disappear at any time. The Emperor of Great Wei loved his Empress very much. He had searched the entire country for famous doctors, but there was no sign of improvement. It was actually such a strange disease. The beast Thearka's eyes flashed with surprise. His long eyebrows fluttered in the wind as he stroked his beard and fell into deep thought. Even though the beast Tharch had lived for 1,000 years, he had never seen such a disease. Turning into light and disappearing would only happen if one's cultivation level reached the supremacy level and condensed a clone, which was a half-puppet body. Once it received an attack that was beyond its endurance, it would disappear. But from Naransu and Nalan Li's tone, the patient they were talking about should be an ordinary person. This was very strange. It could even be said to be rare. At this moment, the beast Tharch subconsciously looked at Qin Hao. The two of them seemed to be communicating something with their eyes. According to Qin Hao's performance, he was not a simple person. Perhaps he had some insights. Actually, after hearing Naransu's description, Qin Hao also fell into deep thought. As Dinda in his previous life, he had seen all kinds of strange diseases. But Qin Hao had never seen an ordinary person turn into light and disappear. Instantly, he shook his head. "I'm sorry, little girl. The old man has never heard of such a strange disease. It's hard for you to come to a conclusion with just a few words. Moreover, the old man's next priority is to nurture the next Medicine Valley's beast Tharch. So sorry, it's not convenient for him to leave the Medicine Valley. You should change your wish." Even Qin Hao shook his head. The beast Tharch could not do anything either. "Is there really no cure?" Nalan Li suddenly burst into tears. She covered her face and cried. Although Naransu felt heartache, she did not want to affect everyone's mood. She could only purse her lips and hug her sister. The beast Tharch had lived for 1,000 years. How experienced was he? Even he could not identify the cause of this strange disease. It seemed like there was no cure. No, there was still a chance. A thought flashed through Narance's mind. The pavilion master of Western Liang Dangu was rumored to be extremely skilled in alchemy. As long as she could enter Dangu and seek an audience with the pavilion master, her mother might still have a chance. But this was too difficult. It was rumored that the pavilion master of Dangu was elusive. No one knew if he was a man or a woman. No one had ever seen him in person. This was one of the three biggest secrets of Luoshui. Because of this, the emperor of the Great Wei Kingdom did not hesitate to send a large army to Luoshui. He amassed 5 armies worth of soldiers in an attempt to force Yi Long Yuan to seek an audience with the pavilion master of Dangu. Even so, he was not forced to do so. The chances of Naransu meeting the pavilion master of Dangu were close to 0. If you don't have any other wishes, quickly take the herbs and leave. Everyone is very busy, right? I won't keep you for dinner. The beast the arch was not in the mood to meddle in other people's business. He only wanted to bring the dog spirit into seclusion to integrate with the emperor's spirit's inheritance. Nalan Li's face was full of disappointment. She had no choice but to accept the king-tier flower and prepare to leave with her sister. Wait a minute. Just as everyone turned around, Qin Hao suddenly spoke. He rubbed his nose and said that, "You fulfilled their wishes, but I haven't mentioned my request." The beast the arch was stunned. He looked displeased. "Little friend, you took my white glass, soul, stone, and longevity grass. How can you say that you didn't get anything? Don't be too greedy. These 2 treasures are ungraded herbs. Quickly leave." The beast the arch could not wait for Qin Hao to leave. "Senior, you must have misunderstood. It was Brother Dog's request to ask for the white glass soul stone and myriad beast grass, not mine. Moreover, the white glass soul stone was given to me by my brother. What does it have to do with you?" Qin Hao is obviously going to go back on his word. Okay. Little friend, if you have any other requests, quickly say them. I really do have something urgent here." The beast Tharch subconsciously wiped his forehead with his sleeve. Although there was no sweat on his forehead, he knew that Qin Hao, this seemingly complicated demon, would definitely come up with very harsh, perhaps even terrifying, conditions. "Senior, don't be nervous. Since you call me a friend, I will definitely give you face. Actually, I want to ask you, how long do you have left?" Qin Hao laughed. His smile was filled with a sinister plot. To be honest, old man will die in at most a year. My time is very precious. If there's nothing else, let's part ways here." The beast the arch had a premonition that something bad was about to happen. He turned around and gathered a ball of essence energy to wrap around the dog spirit. He wanted to leave. "Wait, lend me half of your emperor spirit's power." Qin Hao's face suddenly tensed up. He opened his arms and quickly blocked the beast the arch's path. Chapter 766. The weather was slightly chilly, and it was already autumn. Many ancient trees in the outskirts of the Medicine Valley were covered in yellow leaves. The leaves fluttered in the wind, forming a thick layer on the ground. 8 streaks of light were flying in the sky at a steady pace. 8 figures had their wings spread out behind their backs. The color and shape of the wings were different, and they looked very sacred. The person flying at the front was Qin Hao, who was dressed in white. Qin Hao's wings were not only the whitest, but they were also surrounded by a layer of flames. He looked very domineering, and Sayogwa and the rest did not dare to get too close. As they flew, everyone looked at Qin Hao with strange gazes. They were amazed at how brave he was. He actually dared to ask a tiger for its skin and forcefully demanded half of the Beast Emperor's sovereign spirit. What was even more ridiculous was that the Beast Dwarch had agreed to it. Qin Hao flew calmly. The smile on his face showed that he was very satisfied with the results of the Medicine Valley's assessment. First, they obtained the herbs to refine the 9 transformations soul return elixir. Then, they found the devil's fruit that could help the drunkard grow his arms again. The fruit that was soaked in the spring water in the Medicine Valley's plaza was actually not the devil's fruit. It was the natural spirit fruit. The natural spirit fruit's effect was to regrow the limbs of a crippled person. It was very similar to Tsayogwa's goal in entering the Medicine Valley. At this moment, the natural spirit fruit was in Xiaogua's space ring. He wanted to return to the Fengli Temple and personally hand it to the drunkard. As for the sacred spring water in the plaza, it all fell into Yi Shuhen's pocket. The spring water was very useful for him to cultivate the water god's body. In fact, Yi Shuhan was the only one who cultivated the water god's body, so no one snatched it from him. To everyone, Qin Hao, Xiaogua, and Yi Shuhan were undoubtedly the biggest winners. Especially Qin Hao. Not only did he forcefully ask for half of the beast Thearka's soul, but the dog spirit also obtained all the inheritance and became the next Medicine Valley king. This made Yu Wuhin and Han Man very envious. Of course, one had to be content. The members of the Red Sun battle team did not return empty-handed after entering the Medicine Valley. Each of them had obtained a king-level medicinal herb, which was already considered a great fortune. On the other hand, the Mad Dragon Academy, Star Moon Academy, and Decimo Academy were completely annihilated. A total of 30 people, none of them survived. To the other 3 courtyards, it could be said to be the heaviest blow in hundreds of years. This was because from then on, none of their disciples would be able to compete with Qi Yang. Xiaogua, Yi Shuhan, and Yi Wuhin would undoubtedly be the most outstanding representatives of the next generation of Western Liang. How glorious was it for an academy to take in all the experts of an era. However, what Yi Shuhan and the others didn't understand was why Qin Hao wanted half of the beast Thearka's soul. After all, the dog spirit had obtained all the inheritance of the Beast Emperor's brother and was destined to become the new leader of the Medicine Valley. There was no need for Qin Hao to do anything unnecessary. If he angered the Beast Emperor because of this, wouldn't he lose more than he gained? Actually, this was something that the Beast Emperor did not understand. He thought that the reason why Qin Hao wanted half of the Beast Thearka's soul was most likely for his own cultivation. This confirmed the Beast Emperor's guess that Qin Hao was a reincarnated spirit of some almighty. He wanted to use half of the Beast Thearka's soul's power to speed up his return to his peak state. In fact, the Beast Emperor's guess was right. Qin Hao was indeed a reincarnated almighty. However, he didn't want the Beast Thearka's soul's power for his own cultivation. He wanted it for someone else. With half of the Beast Thearka's soul's power, you can awaken your Emperor's soul and repair the damage caused by the Sunset Arrow. Qin Hao's lips curled up. He thought about the advice the Beast Emperor gave him when he extracted the Beast Thearka's soul. He couldn't help but find it funny. The Beast Emperor transmitted his voice. "Brother, you can't go against the heavenly Tao. Why are you so stubborn? Absorb half of my Beast Thearka's soul's power. Even if you return to your peak state, you won't be able to escape the cycle of reincarnation." Qin Hao knew that the Beast Emperor was trying to persuade him to be more open-minded. It was impossible for a mortal to break through to the god level. Therefore, no matter how hard he tried, it was still useless. However, Qin Hao really didn't do it for him. I'm just puzzled. Out of the 8 of us, which one of us isn't an absolute genius? Why did the Beast Thearka's inheritance fall into Brother Dog's hands? Oh, I'm sorry, Big Brother. I don't mean to look down on Brother Dog. I'm just curious. At that moment, Xiaogua's sorrowful voice came from beside him. The Beast Thearka's inheritance was obtained by a dog in the end. It was extremely strange. You're usually quite smart. Why are you being so silly now? Can't you see that the inheritance in the ball of light is in the shape of a dog? Only the same kind can perfectly unleash the inherited bloodline's power. If it were us, the fusion rate would at most reach 70%. We wouldn't be able to unleash our full power. Yi Shuhan flapped his origin wings and floated over. He rolled his eyes at Xiaogua. Oh, right. Xiaogua suddenly understood. Then he frowned. But there are more than 1 million demonic beasts in the Medicine Valley. They can't possibly lack a stray dog, right? There's no need to find Brother Dog. Can other stray dogs compare to my young master's dog? Xinger couldn't stand it anymore and chimed in. Qin Hao's dog spirit had grown up eating elixirs since it was young. It had swallowed hundreds of thousands of inner cores along the way. Moreover, it had the power of the exceptional fire. its physical condition was rather superior. For example, among humans, it was undoubtedly a genius among geniuses, a monster among monsters. It was truly tall, rich, and handsome. How could other stray dogs be compared to it? Miss Xing is right. For what I see, it must be Brother Dog's looks that captivated the beast Thorch. The scar on Brother Dog's face is incomparably wild. Han Man chuckled foolishly. Everyone ignored him. Qin Hao pondered for a moment. Only then did he remember the beast Thearch's instructions before he left. The dog spirit had to stay in the Medicine Valley for at least a year and a half. No matter what happened, even if the sky collapsed, it must not leave. In that year and a half, it had to refine the power of inheritance every day. Otherwise, it would suffer great damage. Therefore, when it met Qin Hao again, the dog spirit would transform into a human. I wonder if Brother Dog still has the scar on his face at that time? Qin Hao asked himself. Then he smiled and shook his head. A canyon appeared in front of them. Not far from the exit of the Medicine Valley, they could vaguely see the tall city walls built by the Whitewater Army. There were also the figures of soldiers moving on the city walls. At this moment, Qin Hao stopped moving forward and hovered in midair. He turned around and looked at Yi Shuihan. We won't go back to accept the graduation certificate. Guadi and I will return directly to Jinling City. Express my apologies to Yao Lao on my behalf. Tell him that I will come back to Luo Shui 15 days later. Okay. Yi Shuihan nodded. He knew that Qin Hao and Xiaowa were going back to revive Xian and treat Drunkard. I will tell the vice president. Don't worry, boss. Qin Hao nodded slightly. Also, are you really not willing to let your fingers grow back? If you miss this opportunity, you won't get another one. Previously, one of Yi Shuihan's little fingers had been cut off by Yuan Tianzai. Therefore, he only had 9 fingers now. Yi Shuihan was a prince and the future emperor of Luo Shui. If he only had 9 fingers, it would be too damaging to his appearance. Chapter 767. Yi Shuihan laughed heartily. He was very open-minded. The 9-fingered emperor? Qin Hao lowered his eyes and murmured, No, the 9-fingered emperor is not worthy of my brother. I want you to be the 9-fingered god emperor, or even the 9-fingered divine king in the future. His eyes seemed to be burning with raging flames. Qin Hao had the qualifications to become a god. Once he ascended to the divine world, he would naturally bring Xiaowa and Yi Shuihan with him. The brothers would work together to overthrow a divine king. Of course, Qin Hao didn't say these words publicly. Some secrets weren't for the public to know yet. Qin Hao, are you really not going back to the academy to accept the most awesome certificate of the new generation? Everyone has seen your cultivation. Don't worry. I will report this to the various deans and give you the first place. Yi Wuhan nodded at Qin Hao sincerely. The so-called first-place certificate was for the top person of the 4 courtyards in the Medicine Valley's assessment. This title was very big and almost represented the strongest title of the next generation. When the time came, it would be popular in the entire Western Liang and be admired by countless people. Do I need you to give up the first place? Xiao was snorted. Now, even Yi Wuhan couldn't withstand a single move from Qin Hao. Sorry, it was a slip of the tongue. Yi Wuhan apologized repeatedly. It's fine. I don't need the title of the top person of the 4 courtyards. Actually, I think the second place is better. When the time comes, you can help me get the second place certificate. Qin Hao smiled. I'm ashamed. Yi Wuhan lowered his head. Qin Hao was actually so open-minded. Other than being grateful, Yi Wuhan didn't refuse. This was because the first person would receive a generous prize. Those prizes naturally couldn't be compared to the half of the power of the sovereign spirit in Qin Hao's hands. They couldn't even be compared to half of the power of the sovereign spirit. But to Yi Wuhan, he really needed it. If you need me, Yi Wuhan, in the future, no matter how important the matter is, as long as any member of the Haoqi Alliance asks, I will not hesitate to go through water and tread on fire. Yi Wuhan cupped his fists and solemnly promised. Qin Hao nodded. All right, Shuihan. Qin Hao looked at Yi Shuihan and said, After I leave, remember to find 4th Master to get the life replenishing grass. Go to the forest of darkness and give it to your master. Also, give him the medicinal ingredients that I prepare beforehand. 15 days later, see you at Star Moon Academy. Melon brother, Xing, let's go. Qin Hao raised his hand, and a broom flew out from his spatial ring. The three of them rode on the broom and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Their speed was astonishing. Brother Qin Hao, you didn't bring me along again. Looking at the direction where Qin Hao had disappeared, Nalan Li pouted and sulked. That's enough. How old are you? Why are you still clinging to her? Could it be that my sister wants to marry Qin Hao when she grows up? Naransu smiled and pinched Nalan Li's nose. Aya, that's not it. Sister, don't make fun of me. Nalan Li pretended to be angry. She waved her little fist and hit Naransu. In reality, she wanted to. Hey, that brat Sayogwa, didn't you promise to protect me? Due to her face, Nalan Li was too embarrassed to say anything. However, Sayogwa didn't take the initiative to bring her along. He deserved to be single. He deserved to be a third wheel in front of Brother Qin Hao. Xiao Zhu, the patient in your house. As Qin Hao walked away, Yi Shuihan looked at Naransu with concern. Naransu and Nalan Li were willing to give up the precious king medicine in exchange for the Beast Emperor's wish to save someone. That patient must be very important to the two sisters. However, the Beast Emperor didn't fulfill her wish. If you mind, I can order all the imperial physicians in Luosha. There's no need. Nalan Zhu directly interrupted Yi Shuihan and recovered his cold and aloof temperament. A coldness that rejected people from 1,000 miles away spread out imperceptibly. In reality, even Yi Longyuan couldn't do anything. What could Yi Shuihan do? We still have something to do, so we'll part here. However, as members of the Grand Alliance, we will fight for Qin Hao against Xingyu College in 15 days. After speaking, Naransu pulled Nalan Li and left. But Yi Shuihan wanted to say something, but stopped. He watched Naransu leave, but he didn't have an excuse to make her stay. He could only smile bitterly and whisper in a voice that only he could hear, "Actually, I want to say that you should beg Boss to give it a try. Boss's medical skills are really good. Sigh, women are all like this. Don't be discouraged. If you like her, go after her. If you get rejected, force a kiss on her. If she still dares to reject you, go for it. If you can't do it once, then do it twice. If you do it twice, then do it thrice. I have faith in you." Yi Wuhan patted Yi Shuihan's shoulder, took a deep breath, and flew towards the exit of the canyon. Just thinking about the title of #1 in the 4 courtyards made him excited. Actually, the prize was even more exciting. What kind of nonsense is this? As a prince, how can I use such despicable methods? Unless it's absolutely necessary, I firmly believe that I won't do it. Yi Shuihan shouted with a righteous face. When Naransu's figure disappeared, he chuckled. But if there's no one around, I'll give it a try. Wow, so you're in love? Han Man was shocked. You can actually tell? Yi Shuihan raised his head abruptly and looked even more shocked. Of course, I'm not a fool. I'm just a little slow on the uptake, Han Man said solemnly. Please, since you know that you're slow on the uptake, why aren't you chasing after Yi Wuhan? Otherwise, he'll take all the prizes. Yi Shuihan glanced at Han Man with disdain and turned to fly towards Luoshui's imperial city. He heaved a sigh of relief. He had finally completed the task that his father had given him. There were no more demonic beasts in the medicinal valley. Everything was very safe. But at this moment, he recalled what the Beast Arch had said. You want to replace Yi Longyuan and continue to sign the non-aggression agreement? Sorry, old man can't make the decision, because I'm going to die soon. Therefore, whether Western Liang will be chaotic in the future will be up to the dog spirit. Thinking of this, Yi Shuihan had the urge to faint. But fortunately, the dog spirit was Boss's baby. In fact, whether Western Liang would be chaotic in the future would be up to Qin Hao. Yi Shuihan was Qin Hao's sworn brother. Therefore, in the next 100 years, 1,000 years, Luo Shui would be prosperous and the people would be at peace. 2 days later, Qin Hao and the other two stepped into the brand new Daqin border. Of course, the Daqin here was not the Daqin of the East Continent, but the Daqin of Western Liang. They looked at the golden palace that was getting closer and closer as well as the tall city walls that were not inferior to Luoshui's imperial city. In addition to being full of pride, Sayogwa and Qinhao were also very excited. Xing was even more excited because she only knew now that Qinhao was already the future emperor of an empire. Chapter 768. I remember the first time we came back. We spent a total of 10 days. The second time, we arrived in 2 days. Big Brother's broom speed is really amazing. Sayogwa didn't look tired from the journey. As he praised, his gaze fell on Daqin's imperial city. This imperial city was called Jinling City, and it was very solemn. It was originally the headquarters of the Sword Young Masters family, the Sword Alliance. According to Qinhao's idea, it was changed to Daqin's imperial city. In order to show their sincerity, the Qin clan and the Fengli temple sect moved here from Tianqin City. When Sayogwa returned to Qiyang City, Jinling City was far from as prosperous as it was now. Now, looking through the mighty city walls, one could see the streets extending in all directions, crossing east, west, north, and south. There were many tall buildings, and the streets were full of traffic. The people lived and worked in peace. Even compared to Luoshui's imperial city, although it wasn't as strong as the other parties, in terms of prosperity, there wasn't much difference. Qinhao was also quite satisfied with this. It could be seen that the Sword Young Masters family was very ambitious and had greatly improved Jinling City. If you like it, I'll give you this flying artifact. Qinhao smiled slightly and used his vitality to shrink the broom into the shape of a brush. He threw it into Sayogwa's hand. The broom's grade was very high, not inferior to Ouyang Hong's king-grade treasure ship. Of course, they could return so quickly because Qinhao's cultivation had reached a new level. However, the broom might not be of much use to him in the future, but it was very suitable for Sayogwa. Aha! Thank you, big brother. Sayogwa didn't refuse and stuffed it into his spatial ring. Young master, Xing, tugged at the corner of Qinhao's clothes. There was a huge lineup ahead. Thinking of Qinhao's identity, she was a little nervous, afraid that she would embarrass Qinhao. Relax, you're the young mistress of the High family's business. Qinhao's warm words gave Xing a lot of confidence. While speaking, the three of them prepared to enter the city. But suddenly, more than 20 powerful auras rose from the city. In a flash, they turned into silhouettes and blocked Qinhao's path. These people were old men in golden robes with swords embroidered on their chests. It was obvious that they were the Sword Alliance's elder group. All of them had red halos around their bodies. Their cultivations had all reached the king realm, and they were all above the 6th level. Their battle prowess was not small at all. 3 of them were peak Yuan monarchs. Qinhao gave him a sidelong glance, showing a look of admiration. Although they were the elders of the Sword Alliance, they were also the elites of Daqin. Even if Qinhao used his 3 souls and stimulated the power of the dragon, he might not be able to defeat these 20 elders. But at the same time, the other party couldn't do anything to Qinhao. In fact, if Qinhao wanted to turn around and leave, it would be very easy. After the elders of the Sword Alliance appeared, their expressions were very solemn. They felt pressure from Qinhao. If Sayogwa wasn't here, they might have even used force. After all, behind them was the imperial capital of the Daqin Empire. How could they allow unknown outsiders to invade? It was also at this time that the one who seemed to be the oldest among the 20 or so white-haired old men walked out. With an old-fashioned face, he asked Qi Xiaogua, "King Qi, who are these 2? Their auras are so strong. Why didn't we receive your message in advance?" After establishing Daqin, Qin had already conferred Sayogwa the title of King Qi, which gave him a lofty status. However, there was no respect in the elder's tone. Instead, there was a hint of blame. "All of you *King back down. You old fogies are really embarrassing the Jian family." 2 roars were heard. Immediately, 2 figures flew out from the city. Before Sayogwa could speak, the 2 figures had already sternly reprimanded the elders. Seeing the 2 familiar figures, Qinhao smiled. One of them was the Sword Young Master. The other was the old demon. At this time, The old demon's aura was so strong that it made Qin Hao feel a great sense of crisis. Qin Hao guessed that the old demon was about to completely refine Shimin Xuanxiao's body. At the very least, he had refined more than 80% of Shimin Xuanxiao's body because the aura emitted by the old demon was at the venerable level. Greetings, second master. Greetings, eldest master. The elder's expressions changed drastically. They had actually alarmed the young master and second master. After looking at each other, they all looked terrified. Even though they were still floating in the air and were being watched by millions of residents in the city, they quickly bowed 90 degrees and hurriedly saluted. Especially when it came to the old demon, they couldn't afford to be negligent. In the eyes of the elders, the old demon was even more terrifying than their eldest master. After returning from Luo Shui on Qin Hao's orders, the old demon had not only drilled the army, but also everyone in the Sword Union. He had drilled them so much that even the Sword Union's old ancestor, who was also the Sword Young Master's grandfather, was so scared that he didn't even dare to step out of the house. He had been hiding in a secret room, not daring to show his face. The Sword Ancestor was a Yuan Venerate, yet even he was scared by the old demon. How could these elders dare to be disrespectful to the second master? You bunch of brats! How dare you block my master's path? Do you want to die? The old demon was also furious. He glared fiercely at the great elder who was leading the group. The great elder trembled violently when he saw this. His pupils dilated as he said in disbelief, "Second master's master? Not only did you not pay your respects to His Highness Qin Hao when he returned, but you also stopped him from returning home. Really, my grandfather and father, Duke Champion, have lost all face because of you." The Sword Young Master pointed at each of the old men's faces one by one. Furthermore, he made it clear that they had lost face for his grandfather and father. Crack! At this moment, the Elder Council began to panic. The second master's master? His Highness Qin Hao? Could it be that this handsome, confident, and extraordinary young man standing beside King Qi was... Sorry, I didn't have time to explain before second uncle and brother Jin arrived. So don't blame me. Xiaogwa spread his hands helplessly when he saw the great elder's pained expression and cold sweat dripping down his forehead. I deserve to die 1,000 deaths for offending His Highness Qin Hao. Please punish me, Your Highness. The great elder was very quick-witted. He immediately poked his head under Qin Hao's waistband and begged for forgiveness. We deserve to die 1,000 deaths for our sins. Swoosh! The Sword Alliance's elders knelt in unison. This time, it wasn't a simple salute. They knelt in front of the soldiers on the city wall and the commoners. Who was Qin Hao? Qin Hao was the future monarch of Daqin. Even the Sword Alliance's ancestor and Duke Champion were his subordinates, so it was only right for these little elders to kneel. The scene of the Sword Alliance's elders kneeling in unison was quite shocking. At the very least, no one other than the Sword Alliance's ancestor, Duke Champion, and the current monarch, Qin Shilong, could bear the collective kneeling of the elders. Even Xiaogwa and the Sword Young Master didn't have the qualifications. It was completely obvious from the way the great elder dared to speak to Xiaogwa in a reproachful tone earlier. It was also at this moment that the soldiers on the city wall and the commoners in the city pointed at the comical scene in the sky in disgust. Damn! Who's that kid in white in the sky? The entire elder group is kneeling. That person's identity isn't simple. He came with King Qi. I'm guessing that he's most likely a big shot in Luo Shui. Slap! A loud slap suddenly sounded. An officer who looked like a squad leader raised his hand and slapped his subordinate's face. He said angrily, "Nonsense! What kind of big shot can there be in Luo Shui? Even if a big shot at the prince level came, he's not qualified to receive the collective kneeling of our Sword Alliance's elders. Especially the great elder. He was so scared that he almost peed his pants." Captain's analysis is very correct. Our Sword Alliance monopolized 108 cities back then. Who dared to interfere? Even a #1 expert in Western Liang, the Luo Shui Emperor, had to speak to our Sword Alliance's ancestor politely. In fact, in the entire Western Liang, apart from the ancestor and our current monarch, His Majesty Qin Shi Huang, only the Luo Shui Emperor is qualified to receive the collective kneeling of the elders. The soldiers nodded one after another. But who is that kid in white? He's so awesome. Could it be that he's the illegitimate son of the Luo Shui Emperor who came to visit our Daqin imperial capital? Someone said. In this regard, everyone shook their heads. It was too difficult to guess. At this moment, they didn't think of Qin Hao at all. Chapter 769. Elders, there's no need to be nervous. You may dispense with the formalities. Qin Haoshu's brows furrowed into a smile. He gently lifted his sleeve and released a surge of yuan qi. This surge of yuan qi flowed through the bodies of the people kneeling on the ground. Instantly, these 20 people were lifted up by an unknown force. Qin Hao was very calm throughout the entire process, without a trace of arrogance. Similarly, he did not lower his status in the slightest. Otherwise, he would have personally helped each of the elders up with a smile on his face like a spring breeze, although doing so would gain the favor of the elder group. However, Qin Hao also knew how to control the situation. This was the skill of a qualified emperor. Sure enough, after this, the great elder and the others began to secretly exchange glances with each other. From time to time, some of them even nodded with appreciation. Qin Hao was neither servile nor overbearing. He was neither arrogant, nor did he curry favor with the Sword Alliance. He was a good leader. In addition, his cultivation was a little too strong. It was so strong that the great elder was very surprised. This was because when the essence energy swept over, the great elder secretly tried to suppress it. In the end, he realized that he was almost swept away by the essence energy because of his carelessness. This feeling made the second elder and the third elder feel the same way. It seemed that His Highness Qin Hao was really not simple. He actually had the ability to challenge a peak Yuan monarch. This discovery made the great elder and the others very satisfied. It fully proved that Qin Hao had extraordinary aptitude and was a good material to lead Daqin to glory in the future. Otherwise, if the descendants of the Qin family were too weak, the people of the Sword Alliance would definitely be disappointed. Unfortunately, they did not know that Qin Hao was currently only a level 4 Yuan monarch. Moreover, as a level 4 Yuan monarch, he was supporting the entire group of king-level elders and could easily kill any one of them. If the great elder knew about this, he would definitely be even more surprised and even shocked to the extreme. Let's go back to the palace. Qin Hao calmly held Xing Er's hand. Time was limited and they could not waste it. Moreover, they could not stay for long. Their main purpose was to save Dan Xian. After saying that, they rushed directly to the palace in the city. Wait! At this moment, under the instructions of the Sword Prince, the great elder blocked Qin Hao's path again and bowed respectfully. Your Highness, this is the first time you've returned, so you must enter the palace according to the Emperor's etiquette. You must enter the city through the Divine Yang Gate and be welcomed by the soldiers and civil and military officials. This, Qin Hao glanced at Sword Young Master and said helplessly, wouldn't it be better to simplify everything? He didn't want to make a big deal out of it. It seemed that if he didn't do so, the people of the Empire wouldn't know who he was. Listen to great elder's advice. Don't tell me you want to slap me in the face. Sword Young Master smiled generously. This was the first time Qin Hao had returned, so he had to enter the palace with a grand ceremony. Otherwise, how could the Sword Alliance be so sincere? All right. Qin Hao nodded slightly. He had originally wanted to be simpler, but he was forced to accept the reverence of the people. Sigh, I am in a difficult position. Young Master. At this moment, Xing became even more nervous. Entering the city through the Divine Yang Gate and being surrounded by thousands of soldiers, also meeting the officials? Heavens, wouldn't there be the various princes and marquises? Would the Sword Alliance's old ancestor appear? So many important people. This is bad. If she knew earlier, she would have tidied herself up, put on some beautiful makeup, and dressed a bit more decently. She had just come back from Medicine Valley, and her white fengchuan was dirty. Would she lose face for the young master? Those princes and marquises, when they saw her, would they secretly laugh at Qin Hao for having no taste? Xing Er's heart was in a mess. Relax, come, take a deep breath. Stay by my side, it'll be fine. Qin Hao knew what Xing Er was worried about. He used his warm palm to touch her cheek, and with the nether-cleansing water sparkling in his palm, the crystal-clear power washed away the dust on Xing Er's face. Her entire person was like the rain, like a lotus flower, releasing a layer of holiness. Radiance. At this moment, even Xing Er's aura was affected by Qin Hao. She seemed a bit more dignified, making the great elder and the others stunned. Such rich water attributed life energy. The great elder said, followed by many people's shocked expressions. It's only the power of my big brother's source spirit. Aya, stop being so wishy-washy, quickly announced that my big brother is back. Sayogwa impatiently waved his hand, feeling like he was taking revenge for a personal grudge. Normally the Sword Alliance's elders were very arrogant, not giving anyone face. In the beginning, they weren't even willing to kneel to Qin Shilong. If it wasn't for the old demon coming back to beat them up, they wouldn't have been willing to admit that the Qin family was the royal family. In their eyes, there were only the Jian family members. Now that Qin Hao had returned and shocked the elders, Sayogwa felt that he could hold his head high. Just the power of a single source spirit? After hearing this, the great elder's expression became even more bitter. Yes, in addition to the power of the water soul, I also have a fire soul and a dragon soul. If I have time one day, I can practice with the great elder. As long as you can withstand one of my moves, I will definitely reward you handsomely. Ha ha. Qin Hao laughed heartily, laughing wildly. Then he shouted at Jinling's city below, I, Qin Hao, am back. This voice was like rolling thunder, and an invisible force fluctuated. The bodies of the soldiers on the city wall and the millions of residents in the city could not help but shake a few times. Immediately, the great elder's expression became even better, and a look of horror appeared on his face. Dragon soul and fire soul? 3 souls? Others didn't even have a single source spirit, but Qin Hao had 3 souls in one body. If this was in ancient times, he would definitely be a genius among geniuses, a monster among monsters, and the future hope of the entire family. The great elder felt that he was about to faint. With such a proud genius leading the way, the Daqin would definitely surpass the Luo Shui Empire. Yet at this moment, the great elder was completely convinced. Moreover, he had no desire to fight with Qin Hao, not even one move, because he didn't want to die. Welcome back to the palace, His Highness Qin Hao of the Imperial Qin clan, the future crown prince of the empire. With an extremely excited and emotional mood, the great elder howled in the air. He howled until his voice was hoarse, and his vocal cords were almost torn. He sounded a little like a duck. Boom! Then, the entire country was shaken. First, it was on the city wall. The soldiers who had been guessing Qin Hao's identity at the beginning were all stunned. They had made thousands of guesses, but they never thought that the white-clothed young man who made the elders kneel would be Qin Hao, the peerless young man who was called the #1 genius by the entire sect in the western Yangland. It was also at this moment that a series of roars filled with incomparable excitement rang out. Open the Divine Yang Gate and welcome His Highness back to the palace. Wild Bear Army, gather quickly for me. The loud voice was Qi Daxiong's. Chapter 770. Gather the wind-howling army. Gather the Longchuan army, brothers of the Quick Run Camp. It's time for us to be unrestrained again. Let's welcome His Highness back to the palace. Ha ha ha. The roars of the generals rose and fell one after another, echoing in all the important military areas. The Wild Bear Army, the Wind-Howling Army, the Longchuan Army, the Quick Run Camp, and so on were all troops under Qin Hao's command. Along with this, the forces that relied on the Sword Alliance were also in an uproar. Go and inform Lord Shangshu that His Highness Qin Hao of the Qin people has returned to the palace. Quickly go to the Divine Yang sect to receive him. Inform the imperial censorate that His Highness Qin Hao has returned to the palace. Go to the Divine Yang sect to receive him. Tell General Jin Chongchun of the patrol camp that His Highness has returned to the palace. At this moment, in Shangshu's residence, Lord Shangshu was talking and laughing with a very important guest. Suddenly, the private advisor of the residence rushed into the hall. Because he was too flustered, he bumped into the dining table and knocked over all the wine glasses on the table, disrupting the solemn banquet. Bastard, how can you be so flustered? Where's your manners? Lord Shangshu was so angry that he slammed the table and stood up. Before the banquet began, he had given a strict order that no matter what happened, no one was allowed to enter the hall without permission. The private advisor was usually reliable, but today he had taken the wrong medicine and dared to behave atrociously in front of the Iron Leg Gang's leader. He had embarrassed himself. He was considering whether he should teach the private advisor a lesson and resign. Lord Shangshu, His Highness. His Highness, it was the private advisor's first time meeting Qin Hao. He could not help but be nervous. He used to be very eloquent, but he stuttered at the crucial moment. Slap. Lord Shangshu slapped the private advisor's face, causing him to spin 3 times on the spot. What a disgrace. His Highness? His Highness? Straighten your tongue first. Gulp. The advisor swallowed his saliva and wiped the sweat off his forehead. He spoke again. Lord Shangshu, it's actually the first prince of the Qin people, Qin Hao, who has returned. Currently, all the officials are gathering at the Xinyang sect. I'm here to report that I hope Lord Shangshu can quickly change into your court attire so as not to arouse the displeasure of the imperial family. I see. Sir Shangshu waved his hand calmly. You may leave. Later, you will stand at the Divine Yang sect to receive Qin Hao on my behalf. Tell him that the old man is sick. No matter how important the First Highness of the imperial family is, it can't compare to me and Brother Tai catching up. After saying that, Shangshu poured a glass of wine with a smile and handed it to a burly man with a full beard. What did you say? Who's back? The burly man regarded Shangshu as nothing and stared fixedly at the private advisor's face. He was the leader of the Iron Leg Gang, Tai Wanli, a heavenly saint. Thump! Sir Shangshu's heart skipped a beat when he saw Tai Wanli's emotions. Could it be that Brother Tai and Qin Hao had some grudge against each other? Why was he so agitated when he heard the other party's name? Iron Leg Gang leader. It's the First Highness of the Qin people, Qin Hao. He's back from Luo Shui. The private advisor lowered his head and answered carefully. Aya, why is Brother Tai asking about such important things? In the eyes of others, the Qin people are the imperial family. However, in the eyes of the old man, they're just nouveau riche who got lucky. Come. Let's continue drinking. Ignore this Qin Hao brat. Sir Shangshu waved his wine glass in front of Tai Wanli. Smack! Tai Wanli swept his arm and knocked the wine glass to the ground. He breathed heavily from his nostrils and glared at Sir Shangshu with fiery eyes. Zhang Yue, His Highness Qin Hao is a young hero. As a subject, you should have knelt down and received him at the Divine Yang sect. However, not only did you not receive him, but you also mocked him. From today onwards, you're no longer my sworn friend. I, Tai Wanli, don't have a friend like you. Furthermore, the marriage between my daughter and your son is cancelled. Tomorrow, my daughter's letter of divorce will be thrown in your son's face. Farewell. We won't see each other again. Young Master Qin Hao, I can finally admire your grace again. Quick, you dog of slave, bring me to the Divine Yang sect. Tai Wanli had watched the 4 great academies Rising Star competition before. Qin Hao's charm and magnificent feat of not retreating in the face of despair had deeply impressed Tai Wanli. Today, he had accidentally heard news about his idol again. He was so excited that he couldn't extricate himself. The private advisor was stunned. He had specially come to inform Sir Shangshu, but Sir Shangshu had ignored His Highness Qin Hao. However, gang leader Tai acted as if he had seen his god. Moreover, for Qin Hao, he had canceled the marriage between the Tai family and Sir Shangshu's son. The private advisor didn't react for a moment. You blind thing. You deserve to be a slave. Tai Wanli cursed. Seeing that the private advisor seemed to have lost his soul, Tai Wanli had no choice but to turn into a gust of wind and fly out. He no longer cared about Sir Shangshu's desolate pleas for him to stay. Although Tai Wanli didn't know where the Divine Yang sect was, he knew that he should go to the most crowded place on the street. Sir Shangshu, what should we do next? The private advisor asked pitifully. Now that gang leader Tai had left, the engagement banquet couldn't be held. Slap! Sir Shangshu slapped the private advisor again. Hurry up and get the court attire for the old man. Then go to the Divine Yang sect to receive His Highness. Why didn't you inform us earlier that His Highness was coming back? You deserve to be his slave. Brother Tai, wait for me. I'll go with you. Shangshu also rushed out impatiently. He even forgot to change his court attire. The private advisor covered his swollen face with his right hand. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. The same scene happened again in the patrol camp. Ha ha ha! How is it, Brother Jiang? How does the Jin family's patrol camp compare to your Luoshui's patrol camp? On the training field of the patrol camp, the soldiers were practicing under the scorching sun. A solemn atmosphere spread. They were practicing very seriously. On the command platform, General Jin Changchun of the patrol camp asked a middle-aged man beside him with a smile. This man was also wearing armor. However, the style of the armor was Luoshui's. He was one of the 4 commanders of the Luoshui imperial city, Jiang Jinhua. Of course, Qin hadn't known Jiang Jinhua. However, he knew Jiang Jinhua's cousin, Jiang Jingxiang. Not bad. Jiang Jinhua nodded slightly after watching the drill of the patrol camp. The quality of the Daqin soldiers and their brand-new equipment seemed to be on par with the Luoshui soldiers. However, if the two sides were to engage in a real battle on the battlefield, Jiang Jinhua could completely judge that the Daqin was actually much weaker than the Luoshui. After all, the patrol camp of the Jian family had just been established not long ago. They used to be a group of cultivators and couldn't understand the cruelty of the battlefield. The cultivators didn't fight. Compared to the crazy warriors, the warriors were no different from demons. However, the Jin family's patrol camp was not bad compared to the armies of Tianlong and Dawei. Ha ha! Jin Changchun laughed happily. Although Jiang Jinhua only said, not bad, Jin Changchun knew that it was very difficult to make the 4 commanders of the Luoshui say such words. This undoubtedly proved the strength of the Daqin patrol camp. Oh no, the Jin family's patrol camp. If Brother Jiang is willing to teach the secret method of training soldiers and tactics to my Jin family, I will give you a generous gift, Jin Changchun said. In fact, he had a good relationship with Jiang Jinhua in private. This time, he invited the other party to come over mainly to learn the other party formation tactics. Jiang Jinhua was stunned for a moment, but he didn't mind and smiled. In fact, it's okay to teach you the Luoshui's tactics. Consider it as a thank you for your help. When he was a teenager, Jin Changchun accidentally saved Jiang Jinhua's life during an experience. Haha, thank you, Brother Jiang. Jin Changjian knew that the other party would not refuse. Chapter 771. Jin Changchun frowned and murmured thoughtfully, Qin Hao. Then he sneered. Although he had never seen Qin Hao in person, Jin Changchun was no stranger to the name. He even remembered it deeply in his mind. Ever since the Sword Alliance was integrated into Daqin and the Qin family moved to Jinling City, every member of the Sword Alliance was courteous to everyone. Even the patriarch of the Qin family, Qin Shilong, and the sect master of the Fengli Temple, Chun Kang, were the first to humble themselves and visit the patriarch of the Jian family. Usually, when the disciples of the Qin people met the disciples of the Jian family on the street, they were very humble and did not dare to put on airs as a member of the royal family. Only this Qin Hao was hiding in Luo River and enjoying his life. He had never appeared and didn't care about the current state of the great Qin Empire. All the hard and tiring matters were handled by the Jian family. As the eldest son of the Qin family, Qin Hao had never paid his respects to the patriarch of the Jian family. Jin Changchun kept all these things in mind. Today, Qin Hao had returned. To the Divine Yang sect to receive him? What right does he have for me? Jin Changchun to receive him. Tell the council of elders that I have caught a cold and am not free. And you, Jin Changchun, pointed to an officer who looked like a captain in the martial arts field, led 8 or 10 brothers to the Divine Yang sect. Since it is an order from the council of elders, the patrol camp must obey. Jin Changchun smiled proudly after giving the instructions. In fact, the patrol camp was responsible for the safety of the entire imperial city. Apart from the city defense army, they were the second line of defense and were very important. Qin Shilong gave such an important position to the Jin family because he trusted them. Therefore, the patrol camp had a large number of people, more than 10,000. However, Jin Changjian casually sent 8 or 10 soldiers to receive Qin Hao. It was a great irony. General, I'm afraid this is inappropriate. The kneeling messenger was horrified. The general's actions were clearly showing contempt for the imperial authority and looking down on the Qin people. When the messenger thought of the great elder leading all the members of the elder council to protect Qin Hao, a chill ran down his spine. Judging from the behavior of the elders, Qin Hao is not a simple person. Therefore, the messenger hinted Jin Changchun to be cautious, as he might suffer a great loss this time. What do you mean by inappropriate? Qin Hao is just a brat, yet he wants this general to kneel down in front of him. Was he worthy? Just do as I say. I will bear all the consequences. Jin Changchun waved his hand impatiently. He was too lazy to care about such a disappearance. Since he was the younger brother of Duke Champion, what was he afraid of? After all, the Jin family's old ancestor was his father, and the elders had to give him some face. The fact that he was willing to send 10 soldiers from the patrol camp was already giving Qin Hao face. Come, Brother Jiang. Let's go to the tent and have a cup of tea. I have a lot of time. Now, let's talk about your tactics. This little brother has been fascinated by your Luo Shui tactics for a long time. I admire it from the bottom of my heart, Pa. Jiang Jinhua slapped away Jin Changchun's outstretched hand, took out a small booklet from his bosom, and threw it fiercely at Jin Changchun's face. At this moment, his attitude dropped 180 degrees. His face was very cold, and his tone was indifferent. This is the Luo Shui patrol camp tactics that I've been fascinated by for a long time. Today, I will have nothing to do with you, because you are not worthy of being my brother. After that, Jiang Jinhua turned and left. Wait, Jin Changchun was stunned. He could not understand why the other party's temperament suddenly changed. Could it be that he was possessed? 19 years of friendship, and you want to break it off just like that? Jiang Jinhua, how can you say that? You are really ruthless. Give me a reason, no. Jin Changchun was thrown in the face. This was the first time someone humiliated him to his face. As the second generation of the Sword Union, even if Jiang Jinhua was one of the 4 commanders of the Luo Shui, Jin Changchun was not easy to bully. Reason? Jiang Jinhua turned around and not only felt funny, it's very simple. Because the booklet in your hand was actually requested by my cousin. And my cousin Jiang Jingxiong, it was requested by young Master Qin Hao. The contents of the booklet are only some superficial research of young Master Qin Hao's tactics. It's just superficial knowledge. Do you understand now? Because Jiang Jingxiong was very eager to make friends with Qin Hao, he had asked him more than once to enter the barracks to help him train the soldiers. Qin Hao was really too busy to leave, so he wrote some military strategies and ordered someone to give them to Jiang Jingxiong. There were a total of 10 such pamphlets. The contents of each booklet were undoubtedly priceless to the military and greatly improved the quality of the soldiers. Jiang Jingxiong regarded these booklets as his life's treasures. If Jiang Jinhua was not his cousin and had held 10 jars for a long time and asked for one of them, he would have been drunk. If it were someone else, Jiang Jingxiong would not even let them read a word. It was ridiculous that Jin Changchun had been fascinated by Luo Shui's tactics and military strategies for a long time. But he did not know that these things were personally written by the first prince of the Qin people, Qin Hao. I'm puzzled. Since your sword alliance has raised such a master of military law, why do you still ask me for these superficial tactics? young Master Qin Hao is very famous in our Luoshui's military circle. The four commanders of the imperial city worship him very much. Let's put it this way. Anyone who has seen young Master Qin Hao in the battle, who doesn't worship him as the god of war in the Rising Star competition. And you, Jiang Jinhua pointed at Jian Changchun. You don't know how lucky you are. You're a snob. I regret knowing you for 19 years. If you don't kneel to His Highness Qin Hao, I will kneel. After that, Jiang Jinhua strode away. Just as he turned around, tears of excitement flowed out of his eyes. Only now did he know that Qin Hao was the eldest son of the newly established Daqin Empire. No wonder he felt that Qin Hao had the power of an emperor. When he fought with others in the Rising Star competition, his unparalleled arrogance was no less than the great Emperor Luo Shui. Sadly, such a hot-blooded man like Qin Hao was not loved by the soldiers of his empire. On the contrary, the soldiers of the Luo Shui Empire all regarded Qin Hao as the god of war. Lord General, all of a sudden, the soldiers of the patrol camp were anxious. The art of war that I have admired for a long time was actually written by Qin Hao himself, and is it just some superficial knowledge? At this moment, Jian Changchun was absent-minded for a long time, and his heart was very uncomfortable. He just saw deep ridicule in Jiang Jinhua's eyes. Suddenly, he roared, "Everyone in the patrol camp, gather at the Divine Yang sect, and respectfully welcome our first Prince Qin Hao back to the Imperial Palace." Since even Jiang Jinhua admired Qin Hao so much, Jian Changchun must go and take a look. At the same time, at the Grand Chancellor's residence, Haidafu was reviewing the memorials. All memorials had to be presented to the Grand Chancellor's residence first. After being reviewed by him, they would be sent to the Imperial Palace, where Qin Shilong gave them a final look and stamped them with a seal. In fact, Qin Shilong was old and incapable of handling state affairs. He was not cut out to be an emperor. Therefore, Haidafu had been working day and night to take care of all the affairs of the country. Gradually, he lost 100 pounds. At this moment, he was reviewing the memorials with peace of mind. Suddenly, a duck's howl rushed into the study like a huge wave. "Respectfully welcome our emperor, the first prince of the Qin people, Qin Hao, back to the Imperial Palace." Clatter. The brush in Haidafu's hand fell to the ground. "Young master's back? Men, quickly bring me my court uniform." Fengli Temple. Chapter 772. He felt like he was in a dream. However, at that moment, the eldest disciple of the inner pavilion, Tiger Bai, shouted in surprise from outside the hall, "Sect Master, eldest senior brother has returned. The officials have gathered at the Divine Yang sect and are preparing to welcome eldest senior brother into the palace." Thump! Chen Kang was so excited that he stood up straight. His eyes were filled with surprise. Power really came back. Then, did Wan Qin also come to the Divine Yang sect? In the blink of an eye, 3 years have passed. "Daughter, father has finally waited for you to come home." He did not know that Chen Wan Qin was imprisoned by the Starry Moon Academy. He also did not know that his precious daughter was forced to marry someone else. When Qin Hao returned last time, he hid this matter. Even if he knew, what could Chen Kang do? Therefore, he was eager to meet Chen Wan Qin again, in the majestic inner courtyard of the palace. Emperor Qin Shilong's palace. "Grandfather, big brother is back." Wearing a luxurious golden python gown, Qin Yu rushed into the room as if he was on fire. Qin Shilong was sitting in the room, eating fruits and talking to his 2 sons. Hearing this, the orange in his hand fell to the ground. "What? How is back?" Qin Han Tian excitedly grabbed Qin Yu's arms. Beside him, Qin Lao San stood up. "Yes." Qin Yu nodded. "It's true. The elders of the Jin family have sent a message to all the officials to welcome my big brother into the palace. Father, you and third uncle should quickly get ready. Come, bring me my dragon robe." Qin Shilong was the first to react. He hurriedly ran out of the palace. "Father, don't be so excited. You're the old emperor. You need to sit in the palace and wait for Hao to enter." Qin Lao San pulled Qin Shilong back. Qin Shilong's body stiffened. His face showed a trace of helplessness. He nodded silently. He missed his grandson too much. But today was different. He was no longer the leader of the small town. As the emperor of the empire, he had to act like one. All the formalities had to be followed. Otherwise, he would become a joke to the people. I don't have to go out, but all of the children and servants of the Qin family must go to the palace gates to receive our go quickly. Also, don't forget to notify the in-laws. Qin Shilong shouted majestically and impatiently pushed Qin Laosi and Qin Laosan a few times. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Soon after, they rushed straight toward the King Pingyang's mansion with Qin Yu. King Pingyang's residence was Qin Hao's maternal family, the Tang family. In fact, there was no need for them to inform the Tang family. The Tang family was already panicking. Men, take my royal robes and order everyone in the Tang clan to receive my grandson at the palace gates. The former great elder of the Tang mansion, Tang Yu, who was also Qin Hao's grandfather, roared like Qin Shilong. The Tang mansion immediately became anxious. Jinling City. Qin Hao and the group of elders landed on the ground. They stood in front of the city and looked up at the mighty city wall. The walls of the imperial city were 30 feet high, and the formation of the city defense army on it was mighty and majestic. The main gate was carved with a dragon's head, and the main gate in the middle was like a dragon's mouth. It was both majestic and majestic. At this moment, the main gate was tightly closed. On the left and right sides of the main gate, there were 4 small gates. The 2 middle gates were also closed. Only the 2 small gates at the very edge were open. The 2 small gates at the very edge were for the common people to enter and exit. The 2 large gates were for the ministers' carriages to enter and exit. The left gate was for the royal family and nobles to enter and exit. However, the main gate in the middle was the most majestic and domineering one. Only the emperor could enter. According to one's status, one had to pay attention to how to enter the city. Open the main gate. Following the great elder's order. Creak. With the push of 10 strong men, the main gate of the imperial city, which only the emperor could enter, slowly opened with a heavy sound. These 10 strong men were all 2.5 meters tall. They were all muscular, and their cultivation bases were all at the heavenly saint level. Seeing this, Qin Hao rubbed his nose and smiled. He entered the city with the etiquette of an emperor. However, the main gate could not be opened casually. The main gate of the imperial city would only be opened once during a grand festival or when the emperor returned triumphantly from an expedition. Qin Hao had experienced this in his previous life. Sound the horn. The great elder waved his hand. Woo woo woo. On the city wall, a total of 100 soldiers stood in a 50-degree formation. They raised the horn in their hands and blew it with all their might. The horn sounded in a low and deep voice. Along with this, a group of cavalrymen covered in golden armor with a red feather on their helmets slowly rode out from the city. They formed 2 rows and stood in front of the city gate with their heads held high and chests puffed out. Welcome back to the palace, Your Highness. The cavalrymen shouted in unison. This group of cavalrymen was Da Qin's honor guard. In terms of cultivation, they were very weak. Many of them were not even martial artists. They were just ordinary people. However, all of them had handsome faces and excellent temperaments. Their appearances were quite good, especially their well-proportioned muscles. After wearing the golden armor, all of them looked like heavenly soldiers. They also had the appearance of a proud rooster, and the seemingly charming smile at the corners of their mouths could simply hook the souls of young girls. Qin Hao knew that although this honor guard did not have strong combat abilities, they had undergone special and rigorous training. They represented the face of Da Qin. Very good, Qin Hao replied calmly. It was a compliment to this group of young cavalrymen. He would not look down on this group of people just because they were flower vases. On the contrary, these young cavalrymen worked very hard. They were training almost all the time. They were required to be one with the horse. They also had to take care of themselves. They took care of their skin carefully like women. Appearance was very important to them. Therefore, it was not easy for them. After that, Qin Hao walked steadily. He walked in the middle of the honor guard and walked toward the main gate of the imperial city. until Qin Hao walked 20 meters. Behind him, Xiaowu chuckled and walked in through the noble gate that was open on the left. The elder group and the sword young master walked in through the minister gate on the right. What should I do? Xing'er was anxious. She looked left and right. She did not know what to do with the 5 gates. Although she knew what each gate meant, as a servant girl, she could only enter through the small gate at the edge. But wouldn't that be too? Xing'er, come here. Qin Hao suddenly turned around and waved at Xing'er with a smile. Huh? Xing'er was stunned. She looked around nervously before quickly lowering her head and jogging to Qin Hao's side. She had just regained a sliver of confidence in front of so many people, but now she did not even know how to take a step forward. Don't be nervous. Follow me. Qin Hao reached out his warm hand and took Xing'er's little hand. The two of them walked through the main gate of the imperial city. When the soldiers saw this scene, they could not help but let out a cry of surprise. They all guessed. Who's that girl? She actually followed the First Highness in through the main gate. How audacious. Shut up. The First Highness is the Crown Prince. Since even he recognizes her, this girl must be extraordinary. She might even be our future empress. Be careful not to lose your head. Following the discussion, the soldiers were filled with curiosity about Xing'er's identity. We welcome the First Highness. We welcome the First Highness. We welcome the First Highness back to the palace. Chapter 773. After entering the city gate, in front of them was a flat and unusually wide street, Shenwu Street. It was the main street of the imperial city, passing by the Shenyang sect and reaching the palace. On the street, hundreds of officials stood solemnly, but most of them were civil officials. The people in the front row had extraordinary auras. Each of them had the aura of a whale swallowing mountains. They were the group of people with the highest official rank. They were the left censor, the right censor, the middle censor, the 6 ministers, and so on. Their official ranks were all 3rd grade and above. They were the most elite force in Daqin to deal with internal affairs. The people behind them had lower official ranks, from 4th grade to 7th grade. As for 8th grade and 9th grade officials, they were not qualified to stand on Shenwu Street to welcome Qin Hao. Those low-level officials were all squeezed to the sides of the street, together with some ministers and rich businessmen. At this moment, all of them were kneeling on the ground with their heads on the ground, not daring to raise their heads. Greetings, Your Highness. Whoosh. Under the lead of the middle censor, the hundreds of officials knelt together and saluted. However, their expressions were very strange, as if they were unwilling but had to obey. This point was carefully observed by Qin Hao. If it were not for the Order of the Sword Alliance's elders, the hundreds of officials might not have come to welcome him. From this, it could be seen that the Sword Alliance's status in Jinling City was slightly higher than that of the Qin people. However, Qin Hao did not care. He nodded slightly and said, yes. Qin Hao completely trusted the Sword Young Master's family. Naturally, he did not care about these small fries in front of him. As for the prestige of the Qin people in the future, Qin Hao had enough ability to prove it. Where are the city defense forces? Guard His Highness into the palace. At this moment, the first elder shouted in a dignified manner. The commander of the city defense forces, brother of the champion, Jian Changchun of the Jian family, greets Your Highness. Jian Changchun took the initiative to step forward and kneel on one knee in front of Qin Hao. He cupped his fists and saluted. In fact, he should have knelt on both knees and kowtowed to Qin Hao. However, Jian Changchun obviously did not want to do so. He was just being polite. Even if he had to kneel down on one knee, he felt that he had given Qin Hao enough face. And at this moment, with a walla sound, tens of thousands of city defense army soldiers marched forward with their long spears in their hands. Their tall and straight figures stood on both sides of the street, blocking the frenzied citizens. Then, a huge carriage pulled by 5 Fergana horses drove in front of Qin Hao. A middle-aged man who looked like a eunuch was lying beside the carriage. This carriage was a dragon carriage, which meant that it was specially used by the emperor to travel. As the crown prince, Qin Hao was the next emperor, so it was not impossible for him to ascend the dragon throne. Get up. Qin Hao didn't look at the eunuch lying on the ground. Originally, Qin Hao wanted to step on the eunuch's back to get into the carriage, but he didn't have this habit. As a result, he grabbed Xing Er's hand and leapt up, landing firmly on the huge carriage. His resolute face radiated with the aura of an emperor. He waved his hand and said, "Return to the palace. Officials, come with us." The first elder raised his hand, and the kneeling officials immediately stood up. A few of them even rubbed their numb knees. However, Qin Hao didn't pay any attention to Jian Changchun from beginning to end. He didn't even say a word. This made Jian Changchun, who was still kneeling on one knee, feel awkward and embarrassed. "I'll drive the carriage for His Highness." As the young master of the Jian family, the sword young master volunteered to be Qin Hao's carriage driver. When he passed by Jian Changchun, he secretly transmitted his voice and snorted, "Second uncle, you're so arrogant. Don't you know that you're embarrassing yourself?" With that, the sword young master landed on the dragon carriage. He pulled the reins with both hands and swung them down with all his might. "Get up!" Screech! The 5 white horses neighed softly and started to move forward slowly. Their hooves moved in unison. It was obvious that the 5 horses had undergone special training. Immediately, Qin Hao sat on the dragon carriage with the heir of the Jian family as the carriage driver. Under the protection of the city defense army, they followed the divine martial street and headed towards the imperial palace. Behind Qin Hao, there was a guard of honor with an extraordinary temperament. However, the captain had changed its Sayogwa. Sayogwa didn't care if the captain agreed or not. He directly snatched the captain's large horse and mounted it himself. He smiled and followed beside Qin Hao's dragon carriage. The pitiful captain stood on the street, wanting to cry but having no tears. The honor guard didn't have many opportunities to show their faces. Today, this should have been showing off. However, Sayogwa had snatched away their chance to show off. Although he was very sad, he didn't dare to show any dissatisfaction. After all, Sayogwa was His Highness, King Qi. Behind the honor guard was the Sword Union's elder group. After the Sword Union's elder group, it was the turn of the officials to follow behind. The eyes of some of these officials twitched. They were very unhappy. Under normal circumstances, when the first prince of the Qin people returned, no matter how shabby he was, it was reasonable to give him a greeting gift. Even if he didn't give him a greeting gift, he should at least say a few words of courtesy. However, Qin Hao didn't give them any face. This Qin Hao is really putting on airs. Deputy Imperial Censor Zhang Yue inwardly snorted. If it weren't for the fact that he wanted to mend his relationship with Tai Wanli and arrange his marriage, he wouldn't have come. And all of these changes were caused by Qin Hao. After everyone had left, at this moment, only Jian Changchun was left kneeling in front of the city gate. After all, Qin Hao hadn't allowed him to stand up. At this moment, a cold wind blew, ruffling Jian Changchun's hair. He secretly clenched his fists. Good, very good. The youth that Jiang Zhenhua admires really does have some skill. Qin Hao. Qin Hao, I don't know how great your ability is, but I've seen your arrogance. Let's wait and see. Chapter 774. Qin Hao sat on the dragon chariot and headed towards the imperial palace at a steady pace. Along the way, the streets were filled with commoners. The commoners were like a surging tide, pushing and shoving one another as they madly called out His Highness Qin Hao's name. If it weren't for the soldiers of the patrol camp forming a human wall, the crowd would have squeezed into the middle of the road. There were too many people. In addition to excitement, the people's eyes were also full of curiosity. They all want to take a closer look at Qin Hao and see what the future emperor of the empire looked like. Many old people held their grandsons and granddaughters above their heads, so that the future generations could see Qin Hao's appearance and get some of the good fortune of the imperial family. In Jinling City, in addition to these local residents, at least half of the population were tourists from other places. Most of these tourists were disciples of various sects. They came from all over Western Liang and especially admired Qin Hao. Because Qin Hao's reputation had spread far and wide, He was the object of admiration of the younger generation. It was just that in their eyes, Qin Hao was elusive, and it was very difficult to find traces of him. Holding on to a fluke, the disciples of various sects came to Jinling City, looking forward to Qin Hao's return. The heavens had eyes, and this day had finally arrived. Therefore, these tourists from other places were obviously more fanatical than the local residents of Jinling City, and also more respectful to Qin Hao. His Highness Qin Hao, I'm a disciple of Flying Bird Hall. I'm your fan. Please take a look at me. His Highness Qin Hao, I've seen your wonderful battle in the New Star competition. I'm your loyal fan. His Highness Qin Hao, I'm the leader of Iron Leg Gang, Taiwan Li. Do you still remember me? You once killed the heart-gouging demon for our sect leaders. His Highness Qin Hao, I'm Jiang Zhenghua. Jiang Zhengxiong is my cousin. Your Highness Qin Hao, I am the Emperor of the valiant country, Taotaro. Thanks to your Highness, I am now the County Magistrate of the Daqin Empire's Ping and County. Your Highness, please take some time to visit Ping and County. Your Highness Qin Hao, I am the Emperor of Fengyue Country, the talented Fengyue Country. Back then, I was very honored to bring Fengyue Country into the territory of Daqin. Now, I am your subject, the village chief of Liuhe Village. Everyone was incomparably excited as they crazily shouted Qin Hao's name. Many of them were so emotional that they covered their faces and cried bitterly. Among the crowd, Qin Hao unexpectedly discovered many familiar faces. Among them were Taiwan Li, the Emperor of Fengyue Country, and the Emperor of Valiant Warring States. Nice to meet you, Gang Leader Tai. Come to the palace to have tea with me when you're free. Brother Zhenghua, come to the palace for a chat later. Haha, congratulations to the two of you. You've completed your life's dream and finally become the county magistrate and village chief. Xing rewards. Qin Hao was very happy and smiled. His spatial ring flashed as he took out a spatial pouch and handed it to Xing. Inside the spatial pouch were some pills that he had refined in the past. Their grades weren't too high, but they weren't too low either. They had been refined in batches. They might not be of much use to martial artists above the profound sage realm, but to ordinary people or people with weak cultivation, they were undoubtedly priceless. Xing understood and took the pouch. With a sweep of her mind, she was able to distinguish the types of pills. Thus, she stood on the dragon chariot and sprinkled the pills on the two sides of the street like a fairy. She had a perfect grasp of which pills to throw to which people. These are the longevity pills that your Highness bestowed upon you. They can increase your lifespan by 5 years. With a wave of her hand, Xing smiled like a spring breeze and threw about 100 pills to two fat, low-ranked officials on the street. These are the saint-breaking pills refined by your Highness. Take them when you're trying to break through to the sage realm. They can increase your success rate by at least 30%. Xing then threw the saint-breaking pills to the disciples of the sect who had come from all over the place. Immediately, these fanatical fans were moved to tears. Those who were lucky enough to snatch the pills directly knelt on the ground and cried. Those who didn't manage to snatch them also crazily searched the ground. Also, these gold, silver, and jewelry are His Highness greeting gifts to you. The smile on Xing's face grew even wider. She seemed to have taken a liking to giving gifts on behalf of Qin Hao. As she spoke, she took out countless gold, silver, jade, agate, all kinds of gems, and so on, scattering them to the ordinary people in the city. For the ordinary people of the mortal world, money was more practical than pills. In an instant, the streets were filled with voices praising Qin Hao. Even those who weren't very passionate at the beginning felt their heads heat up at this moment and joined the crowd in praising him. The scene immediately became chaotic, imperceptibly putting a huge pressure on the soldiers of the patrol camp to maintain order. They felt that they couldn't hold on any longer. Actually, at this moment, they wanted to throw away the spears in their hands and fight for the pills and jewelry that Xing threw out. Among the hundreds of officials, Vice Censor Zhang Yue snorted coldly and said, "They are just a group of lowly ants. I didn't expect that His Highness Qin Hao would pay no attention to us, the important ministers, but pay attention to lowly commoners." What is there to get close to these lowly commoners? Birds of a feather flock together. Even if the Qin people who were born as bumpkins become members of the royal family, they can't change the lowly aura in their bones. That's not true. Next to him, the left imperial censor replied with a fake smile. Qin Hao is actually quite scheming. He used these trash gold and lousy pills to buy people's hearts. No matter what, at least he has succeeded in greatly improving his image in the hearts of the people, making him look extremely glorious. In response, the other ministers nodded one after another, expressing their agreement. Vaguely, Qin Hao's way of doing things was very shrewd. It was clearly not something that the other noble disciples of Jinling City could compare to. But so what? No matter how many lowly ants there are, how can they be compared with the forces of our clans? We have the final say in Jinling City. The Daqin Empire can't do without the support of our Sword Alliance. At this time, Jian Changchun walked over from behind with a cold face. His whole body was filled with a murderous aura, and he was in an extremely bad mood. General Changchun. General Changchun. Everyone immediately hurriedly bowed. However, they only slightly cupped their hands and did not dare to move too much, so as not to attract the attention of the Qin people. In fact, in the hearts of the ministers, of course, they still supported the Sword Alliance. After all, they were a family. As for the Qin people, they were just outsiders. Many times, they wondered why the patriarch of the Sword Alliance, who was the father of the Sword Young Master, agreed to join the Daqin Empire. In their opinion, the Qin family's power was not worthy of the Sword Alliance's submission at all. However, the strange thing was that not only did the patriarch agree, but even the Sword Alliance's ancestor, the only one whose cultivation had reached the venerable level, also nodded and agreed happily. The gossip behind did not escape Qin Hao's sharp ears. In this regard, Qin Hao chose to remain silent. Sooner or later, he would let these arrogant people understand that joining the Daqin Empire was not because the Qin family wanted to climb the social ladder. It was their honor. After passing through Shenwu Street and the Divine Yang sect, Qin Hao's dragon carriage finally arrived at the entrance of the imperial palace. From afar, he could feel a monstrous military aura surging toward him, as if he was in the middle of a battlefield. This was because at this time, the square outside the imperial palace was filled with all kinds of troops. As far as the eye could see, it was like a vast ocean. The square outside the imperial palace was very spacious, even bigger than the square in Luoshui, and could accommodate 200,000 people. However, at this moment, the major legions that were welcoming Qin Hao were still crowded with each other. Even so, the major legions only sent a small number of soldiers, and the real main force had not appeared. Chapter 775. Raging Bear Army greets Your Highness and welcomes Your Highness back to the palace. In the first formation, Qi Daxiong stood out majestically. He pulled out his sword and raised it above his head. Roar, roar, roar. In an instant, the furious bear army, clad in thick black armor, roared in unison, their roars sounding like thunder. Qin Hao stood up from Dragon Centipede, looked down, and waved in the direction of the furious bear corps. The Raging Bear Army used to be the Raging Bear mercenary group of the Explosive Flame Army. Their members were all tall and strong. The reserve soldiers were also selected according to this standard. As a result, its army was mainly composed of heavy cavalry and heavy infantry. It was the most impactful and powerful army on the battlefield. Wind Howling Army greets Your Highness and welcomes Your Highness back to the palace. The former Wind Howling City's city lord, Feng San, also stepped out of the formation and shouted towards Qin Hao's position. Roar! Wind, 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 whoosh! All the soldiers of the Wind Howling Army turned to the left and placed their right hand in front of their chest. They were expressing their highest respect to Qin Hao. Brothers, thank you for your hard work. Qin Hao smiled. We Sir Daqin. The Wind Howling Army shouted again. Qin Hao nodded. The soldiers of the Wind Howling Army were much thinner than the Raging Bear Army. They were mainly composed of light cavalry and light infantry. But don't be fooled by their appearance. Their ability to launch surprise attacks, fight alone, and fight in the forest was very strong. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that 2 Raging Bear army soldiers couldn't defeat 1 Wind Howling army soldier. This was because the Wind Howling army soldiers were too agile. The Raging Bear army soldiers who relied on brute force couldn't keep up with their speed. Of course, the Wind Howling army soldiers were definitely not the captains of the Raging Bear army. Even if the Raging Bear army only sent out 2,000 heavy cavalry, it was enough to break the formation of 50,000 Wind Howling army soldiers. Long Chuan army greets your highness and welcomes your highness back to the palace. Following Feng San, the commander of the Long Chuan army shouted. His voice was very rough. Immediately, the soldiers of the Long Chuan army shouted together. They were afraid that Qin Hao wouldn't notice them. At this time, Qin Hao looked at the Long Chuan army. The Long Chuan army was dressed in dark green armor. All of them were cavalry. There was not a single infantry. This was because they were a very special legion that specialized in mounted archery. The Imperial Army pays our respects to your highness. The Imperial Guard pays our respects to his highness. The Qin people's personal army pays our respects to your highness. The disciples of Fengli Temple pay their respects to eldest senior brother. We welcome eldest junior brother home. Tiger Cliff was so excited that tears were streaming down his face. He, swordsman Li Gangpao, and Wang Taidan stood in a row in front of the last square formation. The last square formation was made up of Fengli Temple disciples dressed in white. There were about 30,000 of them, which was only 1/5 of the entire sect's disciples. The Fengli Temple was now the national religion of Daqin. The number of disciples had increased by 100 times. It didn't matter if they were commoners or the children of nobles. They were all willing to send their children to the Fengli Temple. Qin Hao had come from the Fengli Temple. As he stood on the dragon carriage, Qin Hao felt a surge of warmth in his heart. He was so touched that he kept nodding his head. These people were the most loyal force that the Qin family could rely on. Every legion, every squad, every disciple, and every soldier could be described as family. Qin Hao noticed that the commander of the Imperial Army guarding the Imperial City was the former city lord of Red Wave City. He immediately understood that the soldiers of Red Wave City had been reorganized into the Imperial Army. There was also the Imperial Guard. It was obvious that the Tang family was in charge of it, because the one standing in front of the Imperial Guard was a female commander. She was Tang Shishir, the Blood Kirin. The one leading the Qin family's personal army was Zhui Junshun, the young man who had sworn to protect the Qin family for the rest of his life. It was obvious that they had all grown up a lot. Even Tiger Cliff and Jianren's temperament had changed dramatically. Indeed, the greater the responsibility, the faster a person would grow. How? Big brother, grandson, nephew, we've been waiting for you to come back. In front of the Imperial Palace, Qin Laosi, Qin Laosan, Tang Mansion's great elder, Chun Kang, and Haidafu were all in tears. Qin Hao had already gotten off the dragon carriage. He hugged Qin Yu and then greeted the others. Let's go to the Imperial Palace to see my grandfather. This is not the place to talk. Qin Hao had been wanting to go to the Imperial Palace for a long time. He had a lot of things to take care of. Okay, I'll show you the way. Qin Yu turned around with a smile. Immediately, the group of people headed towards the Imperial Palace's main hall. All right, gang leader Tai, big brother Jiang Zhenhua, come with us. Qin Hao turned around and shouted at the people who were chasing them from afar. Although his voice was soft, it was very clear. Thank you, your highness, for your kindness. The two of them were startled at first. Then they were so excited that they started to tremble. Left Imperial Censor, right Imperial Censor, middle Imperial Censor, 6 ministers, and elders will accompany you into the Imperial Palace. The rest of the officials will wait outside the main hall. Sword Young Master leaped up and jumped down from the driver's seat. Then he walked side by side with Qi Xiaohua. The top ministers secretly sneered. They knew that the main topic had come. Which one of these old fellows wasn't a shrewd old fox? They had long guessed that Qin Hao's return was definitely not simple. There was an 80% chance that something big had happened. but fortunately, he did not forget to discuss it with them. As for the other officials, they were not qualified to participate in the discussion. They could only stand outside the main hall. This hot day was enough for them to suffer. The group of people entered the imperial palace's main hall. Qin Shilong was wearing a noble dragon robe. He was sitting on the dragon throne and waiting. There were two people below the main hall. One of them was sitting, and the other was standing. The one standing was a middle-aged man. He had a red face and an extraordinary appearance. His face was 70% similar to Sword Prince. Obviously, he was the leader of the Sword Alliance, the first Duke of Daqin that Qin Hao conferred Duke Champion. Even so, Duke Champion could only stand. As for the old man who dared to sit in the main hall like Qin Shilong, he was the ancestor of the Sword Alliance. He was an expert who had reached the venerable realm. Grandpa, Qin Hao looked at the two of them and walked eagerly to Qin Shilong. Then he took the initiative to kneel down in front of the dragon throne and kowtowed to the old man. Long live the emperor. Oh, silly boy, why are you doing this? Get up and let Grandpa take a good look at you. It has been more than a year. Qin Shilong was shocked by Qin Hao's action. He was even frightened. In his impression, Qin Hao had never knelt to him. He hurriedly stood up from the dragon throne and wanted to help Qin Hao up. However, Qin Hao seemed to be welded to the ground. He didn't move at all when Qin Shilong exerted force. Outsiders are watching. At this time, Qin Hao transmitted his voice to Qin Shilong. Daqin was on the right track, just like other empires. Since Qin Hao entered the palace as the crown prince, he had to kneel to Qin Shilong. Even if they were relatives, they had to kneel to the emperor first. This was the difference between the royal family and the commoners. Qin Hao was now a subject. He was not just Qin Shilong's grandson. As the future heir of the Qin family, if he didn't set an example, he would be mocked by the 6 ministers and the imperial censor. It would also reduce the quality of the Qin family. Qin Shilong actually understood this. Chapter 776. Duke Champion Jian Changyan greets Your Highness. The Sword Alliance's patriarch, Jian Changyan, smiled and bowed. His actions were very magnanimous. Jian Wenyuan greets Your Highness. The Sword Alliance's patriarch smiled kindly and stood up from his seat. He cupped his fists and bowed slightly to Qin Hao, but did not sit down immediately. Jian Changchun, who was in the crowd, saw this scene and was even more displeased. Qin Hao had not even made a move, but his elder brother and father had already bowed to the younger generation of the Qin family. Elders, you don't have to be so polite. Brother Qin Xian and I are as close as brothers. I should pay you a visit immediately. Unfortunately, I am Luo Shui and have so many things to do. I am ashamed. Qin Hao returned the greeting. The Qin Xian he was talking about was the Sword Prince himself. At this moment, Jian Changyan and Jian Wenyuan made him feel very comfortable and close. It was as if he was talking to his own family, and it had unknowingly brought them closer. You don't have to be so courteous with each other. You are treating me like an outsider. The Sword Prince smiled elegantly. He was very satisfied with his father and grandfather's behavior. After all, Qin Hao had saved his life before. In fact, this was also the reason why the Sword Alliance agreed to join Daqin without hesitation when the High University Mansion approached them. After a brief exchange, Qin Hao was considered to have come into contact with the two leaders of the Sword Alliance. At this moment, Qin Shilong, who had returned to the Dragon Throne, said excitedly, Did you come back this time to find the herbs to awaken Senior Dan Xian and Senior Drunkard? Can they be saved? The opening of the Medicine Valley was a big event for the entire Western Liang. Even in Jinling City, the Qin people, including the Sword Alliance, knew about it. Yes, Qin Hao did not disappoint Qin Shilong. He nodded affirmatively and then briefly explained the fight in the Medicine Valley. He took the initiative to ignore the dog spirit and the beast emperor. After listening to the story, everyone finally felt relieved and a rare smile appeared on their faces. Dan Xian and Drunkard had sacrificed too much for the Qin family. It was a nod in everyone's heart that they had ended up in such a miserable state. Today, this knot had finally been untied. Of course, They could also feel that Qin Hao had suffered a lot in order to gather the medicinal herbs needed to treat the two of them. However, it's been hard on you. Qin Laosi stepped forward and patted Qin Hao's shoulder like a father. He was the one who loved Qin Hao the most in the Qin family. Ha ha, fourth uncle, you don't know how fierce my big brother is. I'm afraid I'll scare you if I tell you. My big brother single-handedly took care of the inner pavilion elder of Star Moon Academy and the grandson of the headmaster of Star Moon Academy. Not only that, but the battle teams of the other 3 academies were also wiped out by my big brother alone. Speaking of this, Sayoba became excited. Then he recounted the whole process again, in much more detail than Qin Hao, especially the fierce battle between Qin Hao and Tian Buguang. It was full of twists and turns, unprecedentedly fierce, and the methods used by both sides were endless. Of course, Sayoba did not mention a word about the dog spirit and the beast emperor. Since Qin Hao intended to hide it, as his brother, of course, he had to cooperate. This was because there were some secrets that should not be shared with others, especially in front of the Sword Alliance. Sayoba's words stunned everyone. In the end, their faces were filled with horror, and they felt that it was extremely ridiculous. How Er's cultivation is so strong that he can kill a king stage expert? Qin Shilong clutched his chest, and his breathing was a little rapid. He almost had a heart attack again. The others were the same. Qin Laosi, Chun Kang, and the others were all petrified. They were dumbfounded and their mouths were wide open, but they could not say a word. As expected, the Sword Alliance's great elder whispered. Through the test at the city gate, he had a hunch that Qin Hao's cultivation was very strong. However, he was still shocked at this moment. This was because Qin Hao's combat strength was far stronger than the Great Elder's hunch. At this moment, the expressions of all the higher-ups of the Sword Alliance, including the Sword Alliance's patriarch and ancestor, changed drastically. Among them, the person who looked the worst was the commander of the patrol camp, Jian Changchun. His body faintly trembled uncontrollably. He was only at the 5th level of the King stage, but Qin Hao had killed a peak Yuan monarch. Moreover, the successor of the Qin family was so young and had endless potential. In just over a year, my brother has become so abnormal that it makes one's hair stand on end. I'm really ashamed. The shock in Sword Young Master's heart could not be calmed down for a long time. During the New Star competition a year ago, he was still qualified to compete with Qin Hao on the same stage and compete with him. Although he was not as good as Qin Hao, at least they were still on the same level. However, a year later, Qin Hao left Sword Young Master far behind and left him in the dust. At this time, Qin Hao realized that Sword Young Master's cultivation was at the profound sage level. Compared to Fan Sheng's cultivation during the New Star competition, Sword Young Master's cultivation was much higher. However, Sword Young Master was indeed not strong enough to face him now. To put it bluntly, he could kill Sword Young Master with one breath. Qin Hao suddenly realized that it was no wonder he did not see Sword Young Master and Bu Xiangshan in the team that entered the Medicine Valley. The two of them must have been eliminated in advance by Star Moon Academy and Shifang Academy. In fact, Qin Hao's guess was right, but not completely right. With Sword Young Master and Bu Xiangshan's cultivation, they could not be compared to the top figures like Natural Liang, Yi Shuifeng, and Xinyuan Wuwang. However, they were barely qualified to enter the Medicine Valley. However, Bu Xiangshan was the princess of Sky Dragon Kingdom, and Sword Young Master was the next leader of the Sword Alliance. Their status was noble, and their families did not allow them to participate in such a dangerous competition. I have a king medicine here that I obtained in the Medicine Valley. Perhaps Brother Qingshuan's family might not be interested in it, but it's a token of my appreciation. I hope you won't refuse it. Qin Hao's interspatial ring flashed, and he took out a 4-leaf seaweed and handed it to Sword Young Master. This seaweed was found in a pool with Xinyuan Wuhuang, and it was very precious. This is the water fairy herb. You can't accept it. Sword Young Master looked down, and his hand suddenly trembled, and he almost threw the seaweed away. What kind of precious medicinal herb was this? Even though Sword Young Master's family was indeed powerful, and the Sword Alliance had many herbs. There were no more than 3 such precious herbs in the treasure vault. Moreover, the 3 king medicines in the Sword Alliance's collection were far less precious than the Water Fairy herb. Not only could the Water Fairy herb increase one's cultivation level, but it also had the effect of improving one's physique. At this moment, Jian Wenyuan and Jian Changyan were moved. Not to mention Jian Changchun, who was dumbfounded, suddenly had a burning gaze. You must have obtained this Water Fairy herb with great difficulty after defeating Tian Boguang. How can I accept it? Brother, although your cultivation level is king stage, the Water Fairy herb is still of great help to you. Quickly take it back and continue to maintain your lead to avoid being surpassed by Tian Boguang in the future. The better. The gift was too precious, and Sword Young Master could not snatch it away. He quickly pushed it into Qin Hao's arms. Jian Wenyuan and Jian Changyan felt that it was a pity. At the same time, they were very gratified by Sword Young Master's actions. He knew the big picture and understood friendship. He was a qualified successor of the Sword Alliance. However, it was such a pity. It was such a good king-level herb that even the Sword Alliance's ancestor wanted to collect it. After all, no one would complain about having more resources because only by ensuring sufficient resources could the Jian clan stand tall. No, you should accept it. Tian Boguang was killed by me, and he will never have the chance to surpass me. Even if he's alive, he doesn't have the qualifications or ability to surpass me. Qin Hao smiled. Suddenly, a flame flashed in his palm, turning the water spirit celestial grass into powder. Then he slammed his palm on Sword Young Master's chest at lightning speed, injecting the medicinal power into his body. Chapter 777. He had no time to feel the effects of the medicine in his body. He was once again stunned in place. According to Tsayogu's description, he thought that Qin Hao had only defeated Tian Boguang and did not take his life. Only now did he realize that Tian Boguang was killed by Qin Hao. Wasn't this a huge disaster? There was a muffled boom. Everyone's mood was as clear as day, but it suddenly felt as if there was a downpour in front of them. The jubilant atmosphere became extremely oppressive, and fear spread in everyone's hearts. Who was Tian Shulin? He was a super expert who could be ranked in the top 5 in Western Lyon. His cultivation was even higher than the Sword Alliance's ancestor. Such a powerful expert's only grandson was killed by Qin Hao. He would definitely come for revenge, which would undoubtedly bring disaster to the Sword Alliance. Can you say that again? Senior Tian Shulin's grandson was really. Jian Changchun's finger trembled as he pointed at Qin Hao. He wished that he had heard wrong and hoped that Qin Hao would repeat that he did not kill Tian Boguang. Haven't I made myself clear enough? I killed Tian Boguang. Qin Hao turned his head and lowered his eyes. His tone was extremely calm, as if he was talking about a very ordinary thing. Crack! At this moment, the hall was completely silent. It was completely silent. The Sword Alliance's ancestor also fell back into his chair at this moment, as if he had lost his soul. The faces of the 3 imperial censors and the 6 ministers were extremely distorted. So what if he killed him? My grandson relied on his ability to kill people. After a long time, Qin Shilong broke the uncomfortable silence and inwardly mustered up the courage to mutter a sentence. There was nothing more to say at this point, and he could only support Qin Hao. It's easy for you to say. Do you know how powerful Tian Shulin is? Jian Changchun could no longer bear it and shouted at Qin Shilong in an extremely harsh tone. How dare you? The Sword Alliance's ancestor, Jian Wenyuan, slapped the armrest of his chair and mercilessly struck Jian Changchun's knees with his majestic vitality. Plop! Jian Changchun's legs went soft, and he knelt in the middle of the hall. As a subject, he dared to roar at the king, which was a great taboo. He should be dragged out and beheaded. Therefore, in order to shut the Qin family's mouths, the Sword Alliance's ancestor chose to personally punish them. However, his punishment was a little too light. However, not only did Jian Changchun not reflect on his actions, but he also glared at Qin Shilong, his face full of dissatisfaction. "Senior, when you on, please calm down." Commander Changchun must have panicked. At this moment, Chun King, the state preceptor, stepped forward to mediate the situation. The Qin family and the Sword Alliance had just merged, and if they didn't handle things properly, they might fall apart again. But soon after, he nodded his head firmly and said, "Your Majesty is right. Competition itself is a dangerous sport. The Medicine Valley examination is protected by the laws of Luo Shui and is a fair competition between the 4 great academies. The first prince killed the grandson of Chief Tian by relying on his own strength. Unfortunately, he was killed by Tian Boguang. It can only be said that his skills were inferior." But Chun Kang paused. He looked at Qin Hao with a worried expression. He knew that Chen Wanqin was studying at Xingyue Academy. Will this affect Wanqin in any way? By the way, why didn't Wanqin come back with you and Xiaogua? Last time, Chen Wanqin didn't come. Qin Hao's explanation was that she was in seclusion. However, this was the graduation season of the 4 major schools. Even if Chen Wanqin wasn't qualified to graduate, she should have enough time to come back and visit her family. Chun King knew his woman very well. Wanqin wasn't a spoiled child. She was cold on the outside, but passionate on the inside. She was very filial and considerate. Phew, Qin Hao took a deep breath and decided not to hide it anymore. He said, "Actually, this is the reason why I killed Tian Boguang." Then he told him about Chen Wanqin's imprisonment and Tian Boguang's forced marriage. Last time, Qin Hao had the opportunity to bring Chen Wanqin back. Chen Wanqin didn't agree because Tian Shulin used Chen Wanqin's master's life as a threat. Another point was that Chen Wanqin believed that Qin Hao had the ability to save her. She never doubted this point. Hateful. He bullied my daughter too much. Chen Kang was so angry that his neck was covered with blue veins and his lips turned purple. Fengli Temple and Xingyue Academy had a deep relationship. Therefore, he was relieved to let his precious daughter be taught by them. In fact, with Chen Wanqin's extraordinary physique, she would receive rich cultivation resources no matter which school she went to. She would be the focus of the school's training. Chen Kang was kind enough to send his daughter out. He didn't expect that he would push her into the fire pit himself. She had been forced and imprisoned without her knowledge. What was even more infuriating was that the person who forced Chen Wanqin was the most powerful president of Xingyue Academy. He was so rude, domineering, and overbearing. If Chen Wanqin really fell in love with someone, and both parties were in love, Chen Kang would respect his daughter's choice. He wouldn't do something so despicable as breaking up a pair of mandarin ducks. The key point was that his daughter didn't have any feelings for Tian Boguang. Tian Boguang liked Chen Wanqin mainly because he wanted to use the extraordinary ice spiritual body to improve his cultivation. This was undoubtedly using Chen Kang's precious daughter as nourishment. Thinking of this, Chen Kang couldn't control himself. He took a step forward and was about to rush to the Luo Shui Empire to save his daughter. However, just as he took the first step, he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood onto his chest. "Lord Imperial Tutor, Kang, don't worry. Sect Master, please calm down." Everyone rushed forward and supported Qin Kang. The Sword Alliance's ancestor even gave up his chair and let someone help Qin Kang sit down. Perhaps the 3 imperial censors and the 6 ministers were a bit unconvinced by the Qin clan, but they were still very respectful towards the Phoenix Glass Palace. The Phoenix Glass Palace wholeheartedly taught the disciples of the various clans. This was something they saw with their own eyes, and they were very grateful for it. "Brother, what do you plan to do next?" At this moment, Sword Prince's face was ashen as he asked. He knew about Chen Wanqin's matter. However, at that time, the Sword Alliance hadn't merged with the Qin family, so he didn't take it to heart. However, it was different now. If Qin Hao decided to save her, the Sword Alliance couldn't ignore it. "Eldest senior brother, you have to save eldest senior sister. You can't let her be bullied outside. Now that Tian Boguang is dead, I don't know how that old man with the surname Tian will torture eldest senior sister this time. If eldest senior brother decides to save her, all the disciples of the Fengli Temple are willing to bet their lives and go to war with the Starry Moon Academy. I, Gang Pao, have already disregarded my life and death. At this moment, Tiger Cliff, Sword Prince, Li Gang Pao, and Wang Taidan all knelt down and waited impatiently for Qin Hao to give the order. Of course we have to save her. Qin Hao only replied with one sentence, but this sentence revealed an incomparably firm determination. All right, since that's the case, the Sword Alliance, before Sword Prince could finish his words. Chapter 778. Tian Shulin is not an ordinary person. He must have expected that State Preceptor Chan would save his daughter and set up an inescapable trap for us to send people to fall into. Everything needs to be planned at length. Moreover, why didn't the Empire's spies send back any information in advance when such a big event happened? The Sword Alliance's ancestor looked at Hai Dafu with a puzzled gaze. As the Grand Chancellor, Hai Dafu controlled the Daqin intelligence network. He did not believe that Hai Dafu had not received any news. Even within the Sword Alliance, no one had reported any news to the higher-ups. The Sword Alliance's ancestor was a little surprised at this moment. Could it be that Hai Dafu's power was enough to intercept the Sword Alliance's secret letter? Senior Wen Yuan, you are wise. I was indeed the one who stopped this matter. Hai Dafu smiled slightly and took the initiative to stand up and admit it. On the second day of the Medicine Valley's competition, he actually received a crisis notice from Luo Shui. The reason why he stopped it was because he knew that even if Qin Wanqin was in trouble, no one in the Qin people would dare to stand up and take charge. It was not that they did not dare, but that they did not have the authority to do so. But it was different now. Now Qin Hao had returned. Qin Hao was swift and decisive. No one dared to stop him from doing what he wanted to do. Only when Qin Hao returned would the Qin people unite and confront the Sword Alliance head-on. While speaking, Hai Dafu took out the secret letter and handed it to Qin Hao while publicly explaining to everyone. Originally, in 13 days, Xingyue Academy would hold a banquet and invite a large number of Luo Shui officials and experts to hold the wedding of Tian Boguang and Miss Wanqin. However, Tian Boguang was killed by young master, and then, at this point, he deliberately paused. Involuntarily, it aroused a strong desire for knowledge. Chen King anxiously asked, and then what? In his opinion, since Tian Boguang was dead, would Tian Shulin transfer his anger to Qin Hao and kindly let go of his daughter? However, Chen Kang was wrong. After that, the wedding was still held as usual. However, this wedding was... Hai Dafu paused again, shook his head, and sighed. He felt sad for Chen Wanqin's fate. At this moment, everyone seemed to have guessed something. Chen Kang's face was already pale as he clenched his fists tightly. It's a Minghan. Minghan was a wedding for the dead. Under normal circumstances, the spouse he found would also be dead. But there was no doubt that Tian Shulin had lost his only grandson. He must have been crazy enough to force Chen Wanqin, a living girl in her prime, to marry Tian Boguang, a dead man. No. Hai Dafu shook his head in surprise again. It's not a ghost marriage. Tian Shulin wants to replace Tian Boguang as the groom and marry Miss Wanqin, so that Miss Wanqin can carry on the Tian family's ancestral line. Crack! Chen Kang's body abruptly stiffened as if furious lightning had struck his mind. Shortly after, his palm fiercely fell, smashing the armrest of the chair into pieces. He clenched his teeth and roared, "Bastard, old bastard Tian, if I, Chen Kang, don't kill you, I'll be a father in vain." Tian Shulin was so old, yet he was shameless to this extent. He wanted to marry Qin Wanqin, who was not even 20 years old. After all, he was a reputable figure in Western Lyon. As the dignified chief dean, he wanted to marry a female disciple of his own sect. How shameless was he? Was this something a human could do? Was this the conduct of a Yuan venerate powerhouse? Was he not afraid of retribution? Chen King wasn't the only one who felt indignant. Everyone in the hall, including the ministers of the 6 divisions, wanted to pounce on Tian Shulin and bite him. This old man style was infuriating. Just think about it. Who would marry a good child from their family to a bad old man? Even if this old man was a Yuan venerate. Haidafu nodded his head in satisfaction when he saw that everyone was united against a common enemy. This was exactly the result he wanted. He continued, "Therefore, for Tian Shulin's wedding this time, the people he invited were all incomparably powerful, and their statuses were quite high. There is the Chief Dean of Omnidirectional Academy and the Chief Dean of Wild Dragon Academy. There is also Lashue's #1 trump card army, the commander of the Whitewater sect, as well as the sect masters, and underworld masters of the top 100 sects in Western Lyon. Everyone who has received an invitation must be present. Otherwise, you will be looking down on Chief Dean Tian. If you don't show up, I don't need to tell you the consequences. Everyone can already guess." Tian Shulin had gone completely crazy. He was completely blackmailing everyone attending the wedding. Actually, marrying Chen Wanqin was only secondary. Most importantly, he wanted all the sect masters, underworld masters, and all sorts of reputable people in Western Lyon to come and watch Qin Hao make a fool of himself. They wanted to see if Qin Hao had the guts to come and rescue her. Young Master Qin Hao single-handedly wiped out the battle teams of the 3 great academies and incurred the wrath of the 3 chief deans. Therefore, Omnidirectional Academy and Wild Dragon Academy are determined to run amok with Tian Shulin this time. Oh, that's right. There is also the commander of the Whitewater Legion, the bloodline of the Luo Shui royal family. His son, Yi Shui Feng, was also slaughtered by my young master. Therefore, Tian Shulin still has the support of the Luo Shui royal family. Haidafu spoke solemnly. The gathering of such a massive force practically represented the most luxurious lineup in Western Lyon. How could it be easy for Qin Hao to rescue Chen Wanqin? The more everyone heard, the more frightened they became. In the end, they completely lost the courage to rescue her. Just hearing the names of the people supporting Tian Shulin was enough to make them fearful, let alone rescue her. Moreover, Tian Shulin himself was a very troublesome old demon. Therefore, at this moment, the hall, which was filled with righteous indignation, became silent again. No one dared to say a word. Even the Sword Alliance ancestor subconsciously lowered his head. If there was a crack in the ground, he would definitely crawl into it. He was afraid that others would discover him and use him to support the Qin family. All of this is within my expectations. At this moment, Qin Hao's calm voice sounded. He had also finished reading the secret letter in his hand. Before returning, he had already guessed that the 3 great academies would join forces to fight against him. However, to Qin Hao's surprise, Tian Shulin actually wanted to marry Chen Wanqin in person. This old man was really good at imagining things. Besides, I don't mind telling you that in addition to the 3 great academies and the Whitewater Legion, Tian Boiwang's biological father, who seems to be called Tian Daluo, will also come to the wedding with the masters of the Zhanyue Mansion in Beijiang. I believe that Senior Wenyuan and Senior Changyan are no strangers to Tian Daluo, right? After all, he was known as the top genius of Western Lyon 20 years ago and is now an emperor expert, Qin Hao continued. Boom! The Sword Alliance ancestor, Jian Wenyuan, and the Sword Alliance clan leader, Jian Changyan, were shocked at the same time. Tian Daluo? Of course, they were familiar with him. Not only were they familiar with him, but they were also very familiar with him. After all, Jian Changyan, the Sword Young Master's biological father, had almost died in Tian Daluo's hands when they were young. However, Tian Daluo had only used one move to almost kill Jian Changyan. It was enough to prove how monstrous and talented Tian Daluo was. He was even more talented than Jian Changyan's son, Tian Boiwang. I didn't expect that the top maniac who stirred up Western Lyon 20 years ago would return today. Faintly, Jian Changyan's eyes were filled with fear. As for the Sword Alliance ancestor, he no longer had any intention of saving Jian Changyan. Looking at his anxious face, he could not wait to escape from the main hall. He only had to say, "Old man, I have some matters to attend to at home, so I won't accompany you." These subtle reactions did not escape Qin Hao's eyes. In fact, he did not expect the Jian family to help him at all. Perhaps in the eyes of others, Tian Shulin and his group of villains were extremely terrifying. It was not an exaggeration to call them awesome. But so what? Comparing their backers, helpers, and lineups. Chapter 779. The crowd fell silent again. Even Tiger Cliff and Sword did not say a word. They felt that Qin Wanqin was really going to die. They might not be afraid to deal with Xingyue Academy alone. They might not lose if they were to fight with the entire country. However, they were facing three major academies, the Whitewater Legion, and the experts from the North Borderline that Tian Daluo brought. If they were to save her with such a grand lineup, it would be like hitting a rock with an egg. It would be meaningless to save her like a moth darting into the flame. Brother, are you still going to stubbornly save her? Sword Prince's tone was tired and powerless. Given the current situation, giving up Qin Wanqin was the wisest choice. If he did so, he might be laughed at as a coward. The great Daqin couldn't even protect the daughter of the state preceptor. However, he had no other choice. In the face of overwhelming strength, it was better to swallow his anger than to make a meaningless sacrifice. With Qin Hao's talent and potential, revenge was a dish best served cold. Save her, of course. In fact, not only do I want to save her, I also want to eliminate Tian Shulin and Tian Daluo completely. Qin Hao replied with a faint smile. Of course, before that, I have to heal my master and drunkard. What did you say? Cripple Tian Shulin and Tian Daluo? Are you crazy? Jin Changchun bluffed. He felt that it was inconceivable. Qin Hao was too arrogant. He didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. How could he boast like this? Your Highness, forgive me for being blunt. Daqin has just gotten on the right track. With our current strength, we can't afford to fight with Luo Shui. At this moment, the Minister of Censorate stepped forward and secretly winked at the Minister of the Military Ministry. Deputy Prime Minister is right. Our army has just begun to take shape, and we really can't compete with the Whitewater Army. If your Highness insists on doing this for the sake of saving people, it will undoubtedly be pushing the civilians into a fire pit. I strongly object. The Ministry of Revenue objects as well. I object. I object too. If there's a war, your Highness and your Highness, please remove us from our positions first. It was almost as if they had colluded with each other. The three great imperial censors and the 6 important ministers all objected to the rescue. To be precise, they were against Daqin declaring war on the powerful Luo Shui Empire. Actually, saving people was tantamount to starting a war. After all, the Whitewater Corps was already on the side of Star Moon Academy, and behind the Whitewater Corps was the entire Luo Shui Empire. Yilong Yuan, the great emperor of Luo Shui, was not someone to be trifled with. Malabar, you bunch of good-for-nothings. I get annoyed just by looking at you. What's there to be afraid of? I won't let you go to war. Even if people die, my furious bear corps will be the first to die. Daxiong could not help but fly into a rage. He hated civil officials who gossiped behind their backs the most. That's right. My Wind Howling Army's warriors are ready to join the battle at any time. I don't believe that the Whitewater Army can't fight with 3 heads and 6 backs. We'll know who's stronger and who's weaker once we fight. Third Wind said, Longchuan Army is willing to fight. The local defense army is willing to fight. The Imperial Army is willing to fight. The Qin People's Imperial Army is willing to fight. Your Highness, please give the order. The blades in our warriors' hands are thirsty for battle. Unlike the forces of the Sword Union, the forces that were affiliated with the Qin family were all united in their desire to fight. Moreover, the fanaticism on their faces was not an act. In fact, after the Battle of Crimson Peak Canyon, the various armies had been training their troops, and their combat strength had increased by several times. They all had the urge to compete with the strongest person in Western Liang. Everyone backed down. Qin Hao reprimanded, then nodded. Actually, I think the analysis of the 3 imperial censors and the ministers of the 6 departments is very correct. Our current military strength is indeed not a match for the Luo Shui. I'm very clear about this point. Qin Hao's agreement to not start a war surprised everyone. While the 3 imperial censors were shocked, they could not help but be overjoyed. However, before they could laugh out loud, Qin Hao continued, but we still have to save people. This, Qi Daxiong and Feng Sen looked at each other in dismay. They did not understand what Qin Hao was planning. However, the Sword Union's ancestor had already guessed it and said, "Your Highness, if Old Man's guess is correct, you plan to send an elite team over, right? If that's the case, I'm sorry, but the members of the Sword Union will not participate. I can't gamble the rise and fall of the Jin family on a little girl. However, there's one thing. You can rest assured that the Sword Union will fulfill the original agreement. When outsiders invade, Old Man will use the strength of the entire family to protect the Daqin. That's all I have to say. Chang Yin, Chang Chun, Qing Xian, leave with me." Without waiting for Qin Hao's reply, the Sword Union's ancestor stood up and left. "But grandfather," the Sword Young Master was anxious and looked at Qin Hao with guilt. Now that the Qin family was in trouble, how could the Jin family not help? "Qing Xian, why don't you listen to your grandfather and leave? In addition, go back to the family's warehouse and take out a 10,000-year-old ginseng and give it to the first prince. Our Jin family will not gamble the lives of our entire family for a single medicinal herb." The champion, Jian Changyin, turned around and glared at the Sword Young Master. "Sai, I'm sorry, younger brother. I'm useless." The Sword Young Master didn't have the face to stay any longer. It was as if he owed Qin Hao money and didn't dare to face him. Thus, he turned around and left. "Hee, I'm sorry, Your Highness. As the patrol camp's commander, I still have important matters to attend to. I'll leave first." "Oh, that's right. If Your Highness has the time, you can come and visit our patrol camp." Jian Changchun sneered and turned around to leave. It seemed like the old man of the family wasn't muddle-headed. He was afraid that the Sword Union's ancestor would follow Qin Hao and cause trouble. "We'll also take our leave. We'll take our leave. We'll take our leave." When the Jian family's people left, the 3 imperial censors and the 6 ministers all ran away faster than rabbits. "Sigh, I hope the ancestor's decision this time was correct. Otherwise, it would be the Jian family's greatest loss." Outside the Great Hall, the Great Elder of the Elder Group turned around and looked at the dazzling first prince of the Qin family with some reluctance. He had a faint feeling that since the Sword Union gave up on saving Chen Wanqin, Qin Hao wouldn't give up on saving Chen Wanqin. Not only that, the Great Elder had a feeling that Qin Hao would be able to save Chen Wanqin. This thought flashed through his mind, and even he didn't dare to believe it. Soon after, he shook his head and shouted, "All officials disperse." In an instant, the crowd outside the great hall that had been exposed to the scorching sun for a long time finally received salvation. They disappeared in front of the Qin family's imperial palace amidst a wave of complaints. Although the officials didn't know what happened inside, they had clearly heard the argument between the 6 ministers and the Qin family's generals outside the great hall. In the end, someone purposely leaked the news and spread the news that Qin Hao had provoked Tian Shulin and was preparing to save Chen Wanqin. The next day, everyone in the Great Hall knew about it. Many people were already waiting to see Qin Hao make a fool of himself. Some people even claimed that if Qin Hao were to save Chen Wanqin, he wouldn't be able to return. The Daqin Empire that had just been established for less than 2 years would probably be defeated. In the military patrol camp, Jian Changchun was already laughing to his heart's content when he heard this news. "Hee, you want to fight with me? You even deliberately humiliated me at the city gates. Qin Hao, I'll destroy your reputation." As Jian Changchun spoke and laughed, he took a jug of wine and drank to his heart's content. "But, great commander, if His Highness Qin Hao really manages to save Chen Wanqin, won't the Qin family surpass our Sword Union in the hearts of the Empire's citizens?" At this moment, a deputy general beside him worriedly asked. Chapter 780. Just like that, the night passed. The lively meeting ended on a sour note. The Qin family, as the royal family, bore unprecedented pressure in the face of criticism from all directions. After the people from the Sword Alliance left, Qin Hao did not mention a single word about whether he would choose not to save them or to save them. As for the specific day of action, Qin Hao did not mention a single word. Instead, he acted as if nothing had happened and chatted with the leader of the Iron Leg Gang, Tai Wanli, and Jiang Zhengxiong's cousin, Jiang Zhenghua. After that, Qin Hao returned to his own palace and cultivated in seclusion. He did not want anyone to disturb him. Even if Qin Shilong came, he would not show himself. He was refining the 9 transformations soul return pill to awaken his Dan Xian. This night was destined to not be peaceful. The members of the Iron Leg Gang, the Qin family, and the common people in the city were unable to eat or sleep in peace. Qin Hao provoked Tian Shulin. Some were happy, some were sad, and some were waiting for Qin Hao to die in a foreign land. At night, the dark clouds in the sky blocked the light of the stars. It was oppressive and gloomy. The sound of crickets chirping could be heard from the grass. Outside Jinling City, the 2 steeds stood still quietly. 2 tall and sturdy figures sat on top of the horses. The Rat Courage Sword Gang does not live up to its name. Your Highness, don't worry, Tai Wanli, will take care of this matter. General Zhenghua, you have the same idea as me, right? Tai Wanli turned to look at the figure beside him. Oh, what is Brother Tai's plan? As far as I know, the Iron Leg Gang is only a second-rate gang in Western Liang. Star Moon Academy is like a giant to you. You're looking for death by going against it. Jiang Zhenghua smiled faintly. So what? Tai Wanli did not get angry. His face was full of determination. My Iron Leg Gang can't shake him. But what if there are 100 of them? 1,000 of them? You should know that I'm not the only gang and sect that respects your highness. So you decided to form a temporary Qin Hao support group? Jiang Zhenghua asked. That's right. Accompanying a young hero like Qin Hao to wreak havoc in the Luo Shui Empire, I can die without regrets. Tai Wanli was filled with yearning. Living a mediocre life was not as good as blooming a dazzling brilliance like fireworks. Although the brilliance only lasted for a moment, it was enough to laugh proudly in this life. How courageous! Brother Tai's heroic spirit is admirable. I plan to go back and look for my cousin. Together with the other 2 great commanders, the 4 great commanders of the Imperial City will send a message to the Dragon Abyss Emperor. On the day of the banquet, the Imperial City will be closed and no outsiders will be allowed to enter. I can do that for Qin. That's all Hao has done. Jiang Zhenghua sighed silently. The 4 commanders of the Imperial City controlled all the military forces in Luo Shui. If the Whitewater Corps dared to support Tian Shulin, then the patrol camp, the Imperial Guards, and the Imperial Guard would guard them to the death and not allow them to take even half a step into the city. They would even start an internal conflict with the Whitewater Corps. Actually, this was a small matter. With the Whitewater Corps' ability, they would definitely not dare to fight the Imperial City Army. After all, the Imperial City Army had Yi Lanyuan behind them. Unless the Whitewater Corps dared to rebel. Jiang Zhenghua's main purpose was to guard against the northern borderline people led by Tian Daoyuo. Qin Hao is a disciple of Qi Yang. The 4 great commanders can't help in the battle between him and the Starry Moon Academy. After all, this is an internal dispute within the Luo Shui Empire. However, if the northern borderline people dare to cause trouble, they're looking down on the Luo Shui Empire. I believe that the Dragon Abyss Emperor will not sit idly by. Jiang Zhenghua explained. He explained, since that's the case, let's not delay any longer. We'll split up. When the time comes, I'll bring the 100 Sect Alliance to help us. See you in 13 days. Giddy up. Tai Wanli was extremely excited. He swung the reins in his hand and galloped away. Giddy up. Following closely behind Tai Wanli, Jiang Zhenghua also disappeared from Jinling City. Fenli Temple, Phoenix Glass Hall. Chen Kang couldn't sleep peacefully. He was so tired that his eyes were dark and purple. He walked into Chen Wanqin's courtyard, the small Phoenix House. The small Phoenix House was moved from the Heaven's Wall City by him, using his Yuan Qi. The furnishings in the room, even the grass and trees in the courtyard, were still the same as before Chen Wanqin left. Every day, Chen Kang would water and trim the flowers in the courtyard in anticipation of his daughter's return. But he didn't expect that he would be waiting for bad news at this moment. Chen Kang walked into Chen Wanqin's bedroom and took out a pair of Phoenix Feather baby shoes from an old box with great familiarity. He held the baby's shoes in his large hands and couldn't help but cry. This pair of shoes was personally given to you by your mother before you were born. Child, don't worry. As long as I'm alive, I won't allow anyone to bully you." His tears fell on the pink baby shoes. In his mind, Chun Wanqin's appearance when she was young appeared. When she was 1 year old, she was learning how to walk. When she was 3 years old, she was learning how to use the sword. When she was 5 years old, she had her hair tied in 2 ponytails. Every day, she would call out, "Daddy, Daddy." Now, she had just turned 20. She was slim and elegant. He decided that as long as Qin Hao refined the 9 Revolutions Soul Return pill, he would be able to break the curse of the 3 lives in one body. He would leave immediately and go to Star Moon Academy alone to save his precious daughter. He wouldn't bring any disciples of Fengli Temple, and he wouldn't drag the Qin family down with him. But before he left, he had to see Dan Xian come back to life. Only then would he feel at ease. So, at this moment, he silently wrote a letter of resignation. The letter stated that he would abdicate the position of sect master to Dan Xian. From then on, Qin Kang would have no more worries. Even if he had to die, he would die on the way to save his daughter. "What did you say?" In another room, 2 empty-sleeved drunkards sat in front of table. There was a stack of peanuts on the table and his wine gourd. At this moment, he was extremely shocked. His shock was mixed with torrential anger. Yes, that's what happened. Xiaohua explained in detail how Qin Hao saved Chun Wanqin, as well as the cause and effect. The drunkard's heart couldn't calm down for a long time. "How confident are you?" The drunkard looked at Xiaohua. Actually, I'm not even 10% confident." Xiaohua scratched his head. He didn't sound confident, but he appeared to be very relaxed. "In fact, I've already calculated that the strongest force on our side is the second master, and then there's also our Scarlet Sun's vice president. However, the 2 of them together can at most restrain Tian Shulin and the Mad Dragon's president. But that's far from enough." In terms of a number of experts, Xiaohua was well aware that the 2 sides didn't have the same number of experts. Moreover, the dog spirit had just received the power of inheritance and couldn't leave the Medicine Valley. Even if it came, it was still unknown how strong it could be. But he vaguely felt that Qin Hao still had a backup plan. "There's one more thing. Actually, Master, my eldest brother, and the only prince of Luo Shui are sworn brothers. Their relationship is the same as mine. Even if we can't save her, at least our lives won't be in danger. Shuihan will definitely not watch us die." Xiaohua didn't tell anyone this secret, because he knew very well that no matter how good the relationship between Qin Hao and Yishuihan was, the Emperor of Dragon Abyss might not take action to suppress Tian Shulin. After all, Starry Moon Academy was known as a royal academy, and Tian Shulin was also a subject of Luo Shui. As a ruler of a country, who should Yulong Yuan help? He could only help no one. It doesn't matter. As long as the Emperor of Dragon Abyss doesn't stop us from causing trouble in Luo Shui, he's already showing mercy. We won't ask anyone else. When the time comes, I'll go with you. I can't let Wanqin be tainted by that old bastard Tian." The drunkard gritted his teeth and growled, "Count me in." At this time, a wooden voice sounded outside the room. It was Xiaohua's senior log. Chapter 781. While Xiaohua was taking out the connate spirit fruit for the drunkard in Qin Hao's bedroom, he also started to refine the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir to awaken his Dan Xian. The 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir was known as the most difficult alchemy technique in the continent. It could even be said to be an almost impossible task. Of course, to Dindi, nothing was impossible in this world. At this moment, Qin Hao was sitting on the ground in the middle of the room. 3 herbs floated in front of him, emitting a hazy halo. Vast spirit qi filled the entire room. Outside the room, Qin had already set up a barrier and specially arranged for Xinger to guard it. Refining the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir was extremely difficult. It consumed an unimaginable amount of spirit qi. If there was a slight mistake, all the previous efforts would be wasted, and the alchemist would also die. Relying on his previous life's experience, Qin Hao had some confidence in refining the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir. However, that was in his previous life. In his previous life, his spirit chi and spirit chi were enough for him to squander freely. Now, Qin Hao had just entered the Monarch level. Refining the 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir was indeed a considerable challenge. It might be very difficult, but Qin Hao was confident in himself. This was because he cultivated the indestructible samsara technique, and his spirit chi was comparable to a peak Yuan monarch. In addition, he had a divine weapon furnace in his hands, with the red lotus fire to refine the elixir and the great void cauldron to form the elixir. I have an 80% chance of success. With the 9 dragons fire tempering technique, it is not impossible to refine a peerless 9 Revolutions Soul Return Elixir. However, Qin Hao looked worried. Now that everything was ready, he did not make a move. Actually, he was thinking about what would happen if he woke up his master. If he only woke up Dan Xian, it would not satisfy Qin Hao. What he wanted was a master with unparalleled talent, a master whose cultivation was still stronger than his. Before Dan Xian's accident, he was known as the #1 Yuan Zone master in the Zhang Nation. At that time, Dan Xian was filled with a sense of accomplishment when he faced Qin Hao. If he woke up now and suddenly realized that his disciple was already a powerful Yuan monarch, he would be an existence that he looked up to. Then, he would naturally be happy and excited. However, he couldn't help but feel disappointed, because as a master, being unable to protect his own disciple was a huge blow to Dan Xian, who was extremely protective of his disciple. Therefore, Qin Hao was considering if he should use the Beast Thearch's power. Even though he only had half of the martial monarch spirit's power in his hand, it was still quite impressive. Even if he could extract just a trace of it and refine it into the 9 transformations pill, Xian would still be able to usher in the good fortune of being reborn. Even Qin Hao didn't dare to predict how powerful that creation would be. However, Qin Hao knew alchemy better than anyone else. However, he had never tried to refine the power of a sovereign spirit. It was extremely dangerous, and he might even die from the explosion. Back then, with your old illness, you risked your life to refine the origin spirit pill for me, so that I could stand on the martial arena and defeat the insufferably arrogant Tian Boguan. And now, I, Qin Hao, am willing to risk my life for you. Let's do it. Having made up his mind, Qin Hao clenched his teeth and gathered the void with his palm. Gradually, a 7-colored ball of light slowly condensed in his palm. Qin Hao lowered his head and looked at the light ball in his palm. It contained half of the Beast Thearch's power of the Medicine Valley. Originally, this half of the Beast Thearch's power was his ultimate trump card against Tian Daluo. Tian Daluo was an emperor-level powerhouse. If he really came from a northern borderline, even Yilong Yuan would have to be wary of him. Moreover, Qin Hao never had the habit of hugging someone else's thigh, even if Yilong Yuan was his brother's father. Therefore, this half of the Beast Thearch's power was very important to him. Extracting 2/5 shouldn't have much of an impact. When the time comes, if the remaining Beast Thearch's power isn't enough, then I'll extract my own spiritual power. This time, I'll definitely let Master appear in front of the world with limitless glory, and let Xian's name resound throughout the land of Western Liang. Qin Hao went all out. He raised his hand and threw the light ball above his head. Then, he shouted, "Great Void Cauldron, return to your original form. It's time for you to show your divine power." As a long sword with emerald brilliance flew out from the space ring, the long sword circled around the room and stopped in front of him, emitting a dazzling light. Gradually, a pocket-sized cauldron, like an incense burner, appeared in the light. The cauldron was suffused with a purple-gold luster, and mysterious runes were rotating on it. Qin Hao looked at the great void cauldron, feeling exceptionally excited. He had been refining elixirs for his entire life, no, 2 lifetimes. Today was the first time he used a divine artifact to refine elixirs. He wondered to what extent the quality of this 9 transformation elixir would be improved to. He used his mind. The white glass, soul stone, longevity grass, and poria core were each divided into 9 portions. The 9 portions were perfectly balanced in terms of weight and size, and the cutting was extremely precise. At random, Qin Hao threw the first set of herbs into the great void cauldron. Boom! As he raised his hand, the world's most domineering red lotus soul fire condensed in his palm. Qin Hao did not hesitate to sweep a tongue of fire under the great void cauldron, and the whole scene was filled with a sense of holiness. The refinement of the 9 transformation elixir and the soul returning elixir had finally begun. The first transformation took Qin Hao a full day and night. The time consumption far exceeded his expectations. It also indicated that the difficulty of completing the 9 transformation elixir was greater than Qin Hao had imagined. But he had no way out. A scream like that of a pig being slaughtered sounded from a side courtyard of Fengli Temple. It was the drunkard who could not help but cry out. He had never thought that regenerating 2 limbs would be so painful. It was so painful that even an old man like him could not bear it. At this moment in his room, the drunkard was rolling all over the floor from the east wall to the west wall, and from the west wall to the bottom of the bed. Then the bed collapsed into pieces, and the drunkard crashed into the south wall, creating a head-sized hole in the wall. This scared Saiowa so much that he ran out like a wisp of smoke. It was too King horrifying. After the drunkard rolled over, puddles of water would be left behind on the ground. To be precise, it was not water, but a sticky liquid like the amniotic fluid in a placenta. At the same time, the drunkard's entire body was covered in this sticky liquid. Looking at it with the naked eye, at the place where his shoulders were severed, a piece of bone was gradually pulled out. Then his tendons, flesh, and skin quickly spread along the bone, although it was called regenerating 2 arms. But the primordial spirit fruit only had the effect of hastening the growth. The 2 arms that grew out were actually the flesh and blood of the drunkard himself. This kind of pain was unbearable. Fortunately, the process was not very long. In just 2 days, his arms stopped growing and returned to their original appearance. But compared to before, his arms were whiter and more tender. If not for the bulging muscles that were so frightening, Saiowa would have even thought that these jade-like arms belonged to a girl. Congratulations, Master. You've finally become a normal man. Saiowa also hurried in and congratulated him immediately. At this moment, the drunkard's voice was already hoarse, and his eyes were bloodshot. He muttered weakly, "Quick, bring me old man's gourd and let me have a sip." Oh. Saiowa hurriedly nodded and looked around. Where did the wine gourd go? Why couldn't he find it? It's with me. At this moment, the half-naked, bronze-skinned log walked in. He took out the wine gourd from his back, squatted on the ground, and stuffed it into the drunkard's mouth. Gulp. The drunkard was ecstatic. Phew, good. So King good. He took a deep breath and recovered his strength. Then, he looked at his arms with a look of surprise and satisfaction. So King tender. How many young men would be envious of these jade-like arms? Then, the drunkard clenched his hands and performed a set of fist techniques on the spot. He felt that his arms were filled with strength more than before. Instantly, he was even more satisfied. Next, I'll show you the special ability that old man obtained. Grow. As he spoke, the drunkard stretched his arms out with all his might. He imagined that his arms would become 10 meters long and extend into the courtyard. After all, it was said before that this fruit was called the devil's fruit. It was like rubber, could stretch, and could not be burned, cut. It was invulnerable. But in the end, he was immediately stunned, because his arms did not change at all. Is this fake? Could it be a fake product? What's going on? The drunkard looked at Saiowa in confusion, waiting for a satisfactory answer. What happened to this special ability? What happened to his arms being able to stretch? The drunkard was still hoping to secretly reach his hand into the Sword Alliance's patriarch's bedroom and slap him. But why was there no change at all? Chapter 782. Then, a series of violent banging sounds came from the courtyard. The drunkard chased Sayogwa all over the place, the wine gourd in his hand constantly flying out and hitting his buttocks. Gradually, Sayogwa's pants were torn to pieces, and his buttocks were swollen. After taking the innate spirit fruit, not only did the drunkard's arms grow back, but his cultivation also rose qualitatively. Over the years, his will had been depressed, and his realm had stagnated. Now, he had jumped to the level of a profound sage and was about to catch up with Chun King, who had taken the holy soul pill refined by Qin Hao. Of course, his cultivation was not Sayogwa's opponent at all, but Sayogwa would not fight back. As long as the drunkard was happy, what did it matter if his buttocks were swollen? You little brat, you dare to fool me? You've grown up in Luo Shui, haven't you? But this old man can still deal with you. The drunkard became more and more excited as he chased, and he was so happy that he kept shouting. The power in his body was too strong, and it was something he had never dared to imagine before. He now felt that he could destroy a mountain with a single punch. Master, please have mercy. Big brother, save me. In order to make the drunkard happy, Sayogwa begged for mercy while running towards Qin Hao's palace. Today was the third day of Qin Hao's seclusion to refine pills. It took him a day and a night to refine the first revolution. The second revolution took twice as long as the first revolution, a full 2 days and 2 nights. Before Qin Hao went into seclusion, he cautiously warned Xing that if he did not come out after 7 days, she must immediately break in and stop him from refining the 9 revolutions soul return pill. At that time, Qin Hao would most likely be in danger. This was the agreement between him and Xing. Today was the third day. At this moment, it was not just Xing who was guarding outside the room, but a large group of people. All the core members of the Qin family were present. Even Mother Blessing and Lu Yu were nervous and could not sit still. These 7 days were extremely important to the Qin family. Not only was it related to Dan Xian's resurrection, but everyone was also aware of the difficulty of refining pills. They were all worried for Qin Hao. Father, big brother will succeed, right? Qin Yu turned around and looked at Qin Laosi. His voice was slightly trembling. From Qin Hao's room, he could feel the surging waves of Yuan Qi. This origin Qi fluctuation was very intense, as if there were 2 peerless experts in the room having a fierce battle of life and death, making people on tenterhooks. Yes, Hao will definitely succeed. Qin Laosi secretly clenched his fists, as if this could give him confidence. Alas, although Hao has improved at a godly speed these past few years, and has changed so much that this old man once doubted whether or not he is still my grandson. However, even if he has reached the king stage and become an incomparably mighty tier 7 alchemist, the difficulty of a 9 transformation pill is still too much for him. Qin Shilong, who was wearing a dragon robe, sat in the middle of the courtyard. Behind him, 2 eunuchs were fanning him with large fans. Jinling City had just rained yesterday, so the weather was not hot. In fact, the air was very fresh. However, at this moment, Qin Shilong felt stuffy and anxious. Large amounts of sweat had already flowed down his face. This was not because of the heat, but because he was nervous. Miss Xing, can I go in and take a look? No. When the Qin family's third brother saw his father's anxious appearance, he could not bear it. In fact, he was also very worried about Qin Hao in the room, so he spoke to Xing in a friendly tone. However, Xing directly interrupted him. Master has given strict orders that no one is to disturb him while he is refining pills. After 7 days, he will come out of his own accord. However, within these 7 days, no one can even think of taking half a step into the room. If you do, don't blame me for being ruthless. Although Xing had a beauty that could overturn the world and gave people a good impression of her, her tone was as cold as ice. Accompanied by powerful scarlet red Yuan Qi around her body, Qin Laosi's third brother was so shocked that he kept retreating. Everyone in the courtyard was shocked. When Xing had first arrived, she had been very reserved even when walking, as if she had not seen the world. At that time, they had all thought that Xing was merely Qin Hao's personal maidservant. However, Who would have thought that she was not just a maidservant, but also a Yuan Monarch elite with a profound cultivation base? And Yuan Monarch elite being Qin Hao's maidservant? Furthermore, she was obedient. This was really a reckless waste of a heavenly treasure. Qin Shilong sighed. An outstanding lady like Xing would definitely be the best leader in the future if she was placed in the various large family clans. However, she was willing to be his grandson's maidservant. Qin Hao's ability was really extraordinary. Although everyone was shocked by Xing Er's display of cultivation base, the members of the Qin family still had a strong sense of pride on their faces. Qin Hao himself was already in Yuan Monarch elite. Even his maidservant was in Yuan Monarch. In addition, Aku, who had rushed over from Luo Shui a while ago, and Second Master, who had obtained a body for some unknown reason. Qin Hao had imperceptibly brought a powerful force to the Qin family. My grandson is right. He has once again made me feel proud. I must take good care of myself and strive to live for another 2 years. The great elder of the Tang residence nodded silently. A scholar who had been away for 3 days had to be looked at with new eyes. Initially, no one had believed that Qin Hao would become a Yuan monarch in 10 years. Now, in just over a year, Qin Hao had achieved his life goal. It was really gratifying to have such a motivated junior. After a moment of pride, everyone did not divert their attention. They were still very worried about the situation in the room. At that moment, the blood Kirin in elegant armor stepped forward and said in a friendly manner, "Miss Xinger, we don't have to go in, but I'm guessing that you are actually very worried about Qin Hao, right? Why don't you go in and take a look?" This Xinger silently looked behind her, her eyes full of worry. But immediately, she shook her head weakly. "No, I can't. I can't not listen to my master. He will be angry." Gasp! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. What kind of magic potion did Qin Hao feed Xing to make her so obedient? She did not look like a high and mighty Yuan monarch at all. Everyone couldn't help but exchange glances with each other in an unnatural manner. Then they sighed silently. What good girl. They could see Xing Er's feelings for Qin Hao. Unfortunately, Qin Hao had a fiancée. Then, Qin Laosi and the others thought of Xiao Han. They did not know how Xiao Han was doing after she was taken away by Emperor Zhao's subordinates in the northern borderline. Would she forget about the Qin family because of her rise in status? Or even forget about Qin Hao? If that was the case, Miss Xing was undoubtedly the best choice to replace Xiao Han. Of course, Miss Aku was not bad either. There was also Wan Qin. What are you all thinking about? Xing felt that the gazes of the Qin family members in front of her were very strange. Oh, nothing. Since Hao specially instructed us to do so, then let's continue to wait, huh? Qin Shilong smiled unnaturally. The more he looked at Xing the more satisfied he was. This girl was bright and had a good temperament. Although she was a servant, the Qin family would not dislike her. Who would dislike a Yuan monarch as their granddaughter-in-law? Miss Ako. Qin Yu looked at the wall of the courtyard. There was a slender figure standing there. She was very tall and curvy, and her whole body was emitting a kind of seductive aura. Any man in the world who saw such a scene would feel their mouth go dry. However, Qin Yu did not have the time to admire her at this moment. He did not dare to admire her either. Instead, he looked at Aku with a pleading gaze, implying that she should chase Xing away. "I'm sorry, little brother. I can't do anything. In fact, I'm no match for Miss Xing at all." Aku smiled charmingly. Her smile was mesmerizing. However, what she said was the truth. Although she was also very worried about Qin Hao's safety. After all, his life depended on Qin Hao. This, Qin Yu was speechless. "Miss Xing, old man, I've been very polite to you. Don't push me too far. Qin Hao is the future of the Qin family. We can't allow anything to happen to him." Qin Shilong was so nervous that his cheeks were covered in sweat. He really had no other choice. Thus, he turned around and shouted, "Great Chancellor!" He was calling for Haidafu. According to the reports of the Qin family spies in the past few days, Qin Shilong knew about Xing Er's background. She was saved by Qin Hao and taken care of by the Hai family's business in Luoshui. Even a manager of Luoshui, fourth master Hai, treated Xing Er as his daughter. Then now, the ancestor of the Hai family, the great chancellor of the Qin state, Hai Dafu, could subdue this stubborn little woman. Xing Er, step back. Don't embarrass me. Seeing Qin Shilong's eyes, Hai Dafu knew what he should do. Then he put his hand behind his back and stood in front of Xing Er. He wanted to use his status to force Xing Er to step back. Xing Er greets old Master Hai. But I'm sorry, I can't. Xing Er first bowed. Then she still blocked the door. Hai Dafu's body jerked. He had truly not expected that Xing Er would go against him. He was truly enraged. Hai Dafu was truly enraged. Forget it. I don't believe that a mere Yuan monarch, like her, can overturn the situation in our palace. We're the palace experts. Take her down. Qin Yu ordered and pointed at Xing Er. Over the years, the Qin family had dominated the Guangbao territory and obtained abundant resources. Therefore, they had secretly cultivated a group of very elite forces. This force was personally controlled by the Qin people and was secretly hidden in every corner of the palace. As they spoke, a large number of black-clothed figures jumped over from all directions. In the blink of an eye, they filled the entire courtyard. There were no less than 300 people. Moreover, each of them was a saint expert. The strongest 10 people were peak heavenly saints. Xing was a level 2 Yuan monarch. If she fought with these 300 saint experts head-on, she would have to pay a heavy price even if she won. Chapter 784. There was no need for anyone to give the order. At this moment, everyone in the courtyard rushed toward the door and used their full strength. Immediately, waves of energy burst out and turned into streams of light that flew through the courtyard. The person who rushed the fastest was Xing Er herself. At this moment, her heart was completely cold. The time was up, and Qin Hao did not come out as promised. Clearly, an accident had occurred. If she had known this would happen, she would have listened to the Qin family and opened the door earlier. If she had arrived in time, she might have been able to save Qin Hao's life. But now, she had wasted too much time. Master! Xing Er shouted anxiously. The moment she turned her head, tears appeared in her eyes. But then there was a loud bang. A power that could topple mountains and overturn seas rushed toward her. Xing was involuntarily sent flying. Along the way, a trace of blood came out of the corner of her mouth. She was too anxious. She had forgotten that Qin Hao had already set up a barrier around the room. In the next second after Xing Er was sent flying, banging sounds rang out continuously. Whether it was Qin Shilong, Qin Laosi, Qin Laosan, Qin Yu, the Blood Qilin, the Tang Mansion's Great Elder, or Aku, they were all sent flying by the barrier. Those who were stronger spat out a mouthful of blood. Those who were weaker, like Qin Shilong, Qin Laosan, and Qin Yu, were directly knocked to the ground. Their bones groaned in pain. They struggled, but could not get up for a long time. How could this be? Big brother. Qin Yu shed tears. He did not want to be separated from Qin Hao forever. This time, Qin Hao's return had made the entire clan feel honored. How could his big brother fall at the most glorious moment? My grandson! Qin Shilong shouted in grief. His heart was instantly empty. Miss Xing Er, what is going on? Qin Laosi could not care less about the pain of his internal organs being overturned. He forced himself to stand and pointed at the barrier that enveloped the room, questioning Xing. This barrier shone brightly. Clearly, it was not something that anyone present could break. This undoubtedly made everyone even more anxious. This barrier was personally set up by young Master Qin Hao. I didn't expect it to be like this. Xing was like a little girl who had done something wrong. She could not help but cry. She simply followed Qin Hao's instructions. She had never considered that something would really happen to Qin Hao, even if there was only an hour left. Xing still had confidence in Qin Hao from the bottom of her heart. She believed that Qin Hao would definitely be able to refine the 9 revolutions soul return pill and walk out of the room with a smile at the very last second. After all, Qin Hao had done a lot of frightening things like this before. As it turned out, he was able to create miracles every time. But why didn't it work this time? Chapter 786. The atmosphere couldn't help but turn awkward. Everyone stood there silently and helplessly as they looked at the majestic fire dragon entrenched on the boundary. With such a ferocious realm spirit protecting it, it was impossible to break the boundary. The boundary that Qin Hao had casually set up had almost crushed the entire Qin people and rendered them helpless. Disciple, why don't you absorb your soul into your body and we'll try again? The drunkard was ready to speak to Qi Xiaohua at this time. Xiaohua shook his head helplessly. No, even if I absorb my soul into my body, we still won't be able to defeat the realm spirit with the help of Sister Xing and Sister Ke. The gap between us and Big Brother is far greater than you can imagine. Upon hearing this, everyone was shocked and gained a new understanding of Qin Hao's cultivation. Their reverence for him rose to a whole new level. Why don't I call the Shadow Killer group over and let the 300 sages join forces? I believe we can definitely defeat this realm spirit with the help of everyone. Qin Yu said as he prepared to summon the mysterious team of assassins that the Qin family had nurtured. However, Xiaohua immediately stopped him. If you don't want everyone to die, you'd better give up on this ridiculous and foolish idea. Xiaohua knew very well that although Qin Hao's cultivation seemed to be only at the 4th level of the Martial King level, his true strength was at the peak of the Yuan Monarch level. After activating the power of the dragon, he even had the ability to challenge a 1st-level Yuan Venerate. No matter how many sages came, this wasn't something that could be made up for by quantity. This was a qualitative difference. Gasp! Everyone gasped. Even the combined forces of 300 sages couldn't break the realm spirit's defense. What should we do then? Qin Shilong suddenly felt hopeless. Every second wasted meant that Qin Hao might be one step closer to death. The only thing we can do now is to ask the Jin family patriarch for help. Qin Laosi took a deep breath. He believed that only a powerful Yuan Venerate could defeat the realm spirit. However, 2 days ago, the Qin family and the Sword Alliance had parted on bad terms in the main hall. If he begged the Sword Alliance now, they definitely wouldn't give him any face. For the sake of Qin Hao's safety, even if he had to throw away his face, he had to get the Jian family's old ancestor to come over. Qin Laosi didn't give anyone a chance to express their opinions. He turned around and prepared to head to the Jian family. The members of the Qin family could only sigh helplessly. They had to ask the Sword Alliance for help at such a critical moment. Speaking of which, they were truly too incompetent. Huh, what's going on? What a domineering world spirit. Just as Qin Laosi turned around, suddenly, the surprise voice came from the sky. He asked the other party to quickly make a move to avoid any delays. Don't worry. My master's life isn't in danger. Not only is his life not in danger, but I can even feel that his life force is stronger than ever before. It's very likely that he accidentally broke through to the next realm because of refining the pill. Otherwise, I wouldn't have appeared in front of you alive. Now, all of you better get the F***CK out of the way. The old man is about to make a move. The old demon shouted mightily. Regardless of whether the others agreed or not, he rolled up his sleeves, and a wave of energy swept everyone away. At the moment, he stared solemnly at the 100-feet-long fire dragon and took a deep breath. Because he had signed a master-servant contract with Qin Hao, he could clearly sense Qin Hao's life force. Qin Hao was still alive and well. He wasn't in danger like Qin Shilong had said. During this time, the old demon had refined 90% of Shimen Xuanxiao's body. He had now reached the strength of a third-level Yuan Venerate. Based on his appearance, his cultivation base was one level weaker than the Jian family patriarchs. However, the key was that the old demon had a head-shaped source spirit. This head-shaped source spirit was an extremely ferocious killing weapon that could refine all external objects and turn them into his own power. Therefore, if the old demon really went all out, he might not necessarily lose to a 5th-level Yuan Venerate. Given his cultivation base, it would be easy for him to break the boundary set up by Qin Hao, who was at the Monarch grade. However, because he had signed a master-servant contract, he had an innate fear of Qin Hao's realm spirit. Furthermore, this fire dragon was formed by 3 souls, so it possessed an unparalleled might. Master, I'm sorry to offend you. After the old demon took a deep breath, purple Yuan Venerate Yuan Qi was emitted from his body. This purple Yuan Qi was extremely strong and was more than 10 times stronger than the red Yuan Qi of a Yuan Monarch. However, the old demon didn't dare take the initiative to attack. Instead, he flew like a human cannonball and crashed into the door guarded by the realm spirit. Using one's body to crash into the boundary was a servant's respect for his master. Everyone, including the old monster, was shocked. Everyone knew that ordinary low-grade pills were white in color. Middle grade, red high grade, gold top grade, white gold platinum, the purple golden pill above his head was a peerless pill that was unparalleled in the world. Based on the sacred aura it emitted, even the old demon, who had recultivated the Blood Emperor, could no longer distinguish its specific grade. Was this really the grade 7 king medicine that Qin Hao had refined, the 9 Revolutions Soul Return pill? No. The experienced and knowledgeable old demon shook his head. He could sense an extremely palpitating power from the pill. This power had completely transformed the 9 Revolutions Soul Return pill and allowed it to reach a whole new level. What exactly was this power? Why did it feel so familiar? The old demon pondered hard. Suddenly, he seemed to have discovered something. His mind shook as he instinctively blurted out, "It's the power of the arch spirit." That's right. The old demon had finally recognized it. The power contained within the pill that made his heart palpitate was the power of the arch spirit. It was also this power that had sent the Yuan Venerate old demon flying. At that moment, the scene fell into silence once again. Everyone was shocked by the 9 Revolutions Soul Return pill floating above their heads. However, this shock only lasted for less than 10 seconds. A moment later, they thought of Qin Hao. Based on the situation before their eyes, the 9 Revolutions Soul Return pill had been successfully refined by Qin Hao. However, as the room collapsed, there was no trace of Qin Hao. There wasn't even a corpse among the dilapidated walls, let alone a living person. Qin Hao had evaporated for no reason. Could it be that my Hao has been reduced to ashes in order to refine this 9 Revolutions Soul Return pill? Qin Shilong stood amidst the rubble and scanned the surroundings as he muttered, "Oh, my big brother." Then, Qin Yu knelt on the ground, raised his head, and wept sorrowfully. He wasn't the only one. Mother Blessing and Lu Yu were also weeping as they kept calling out, "Young master, young master." The scene instantly became depressing. The saddest person was none other than Xing Er. If it were not for Xing Er's obstruction, Qin Hao would not have gone mad from refining pills and been reduced to ashes. "What are you howling for? My master isn't dead yet." The old demon couldn't help but shout. His mouth was a little swollen from the friction with the ground, so he seemed to be unable to speak properly. The shout of a Yuan Venerate powerhouse immediately suppressed everyone present. Everyone couldn't help but feel puzzled. Hao isn't dead? How could that be? Qin Shilong looked at the old demon strangely. If he wasn't dead and the pill had been refined successfully, then where was he? Where had he gone? Don't ask me. How the hell would I know? Chapter 788. The first revolution took him 1 day and 1 night. The second revolution took him 2 days and 2 nights. The third revolution was even more difficult than the second. Originally, it was impossible for Qin Hao to succeed in refining the pill within 7 days. When he tried his best to refine the 9 revolutions soul return elixir and overused the power of his soul fire, while he was stunned, a surge of power that could topple mountains and overturn seas erupted from his heart. The God-fiend blood essence had unexpectedly awakened. This surge of power drove Qin Hao's alchemy skills and forced the 9 revolutions soul return elixir to take shape rapidly. He completed 1 revolution every 2 hours. Even the restless power of the God-fiend blood essence was suppressed. It did not dare to resist, and obediently turned into nourishment for the elixir. In the end, Qin Hao completed the remaining 6 revolutions on the 5th day. This showed how powerful the power of the God-fiend's blood essence was. No one would believe that he could complete the 9 revolutions soul return elixir in 5 days. Even Qin Hao felt like he was dreaming. If not for the fact that he had absorbed a portion of the God-fiend's blood essence while refining the elixir, Qin Hao would have thought that he was hallucinating. At that moment, he was completely involuntarily refining the elixir. It was as if his soul was watching from the side. The 9 revolutions soul return elixir had nothing to do with him. Everything was controlled by the God-fiend's blood essence. It seems like it's impossible for me to continuously raise my cultivation by several levels like before. Qin Hao narrowed his eyes and sighed helplessly. The awakening of the God-fiend blood essence had only allowed him to increase his cultivation level by 1, reaching the 5th stage Yuan Monarch. If he wanted to increase his cultivation level in the future, he would need even more external help. In the past, it would definitely not be as simple as increasing his cultivation level by 1 level. He would definitely increase his cultivation level by several levels. Actually, he was very clear that after a cultivator entered the sage level, every level of cultivation was like a natural chasm. Without the help of opportunities and large amounts of elixirs, it was extremely difficult to increase one's cultivation level. Many people would remain stagnant for their entire lives because of this. However, after Qin Hao was reborn, he was rather favored by the goddess of luck. Not only did he have the help of an expert like Yao Lao, but he also had many fortuitous encounters. In particular, he had obtained the power of the God-fiend at the Broken Dragon Cliff's blood pool. This caused his cultivation level to soar faster than ordinary people. Actually, he was very satisfied. Even if he couldn't increase his cultivation like a rocket in the future, he would still be able to do it.